This is the Oz you haven't seen before, and this is the Oz you'll want to visit again and again.
Whoa. This is a good whoa. I just like behind the
Okay.
scenes,
Okay.
look behind the curtain, if you will. I was fiddling, had some technical issues with the
Don't
audio.
pay attention to that man behind the curtain.
Don't pay attention to the man behind a microphone, fucking please. But there was just some technical difficulties, and so like I was figuring stuff out, and I had to like zoom in to GarageBand to those audio waves, and it like I never like zoomed back out. So when I started recording, I was in the milliseconds basically, so the screen just kind of like took off. I was like, whoa, shit!
All right.
I was just unexpected. I got scared, much like my reaction to the movie one of the movies we're here to talk about today, here on the Waffle Press failed fantasy blockbusters. They may be failures critically or at the box office, but they're not always failures in our hearts. I'm your host, Diego Crespo. With me today is my co-host, Matt Garingo.
That's me. And we're
Matt,
gonna return to Oz.
yeah, Matt is fucking. Where do you even start with this? Okay, so you have seen Return to Oz before.
Yes. Had you seen it before this?
I had not seen this movie
Oh,
before.
Jesus.
um,
I mean, the whiplash must be fascinating. Like,
Yeah, so I rewatched the original Wizard of Oz. I own it on digital. I should get a physical copy because there's a lot of great material there. I also listened to for the first time a commentary introduced by Sidney Pollack, R.I.P., who we discussed in the Michael Clayton retrospective for a little bit, and
mm,
all these fascinating like interviews and references with like people who are no longer with us, but like their family members will explain like their the actors or the actresses process in the film, and like just a treasure trove of history nestled away in this amazing commentary track. Again, it's even on the digital version, like I have. That's how I
mm,
listen to it. I would recommend it. Really great stuff. And they go from Wizard of Oz, which is like a seminal film for not just a lot of people, but for the industry, basically, and for the art of cinema.
mm.
To go from that to Walter Murch's Return to Oz. The main reason we're here today. A
Yeah.
film I was not familiar with very much.
Mhm.
And we're probably going to talk about everything about Wizard of Oz and in general, all the Oz
Yeah.
shit that we know, love, or have mixed feelings about, or
Were
negative
you at
feelings about.
least were you at least like aware of the lore around Return to Oz?
I had
Like,
nothing. The only thing I knew, and I didn't even remember I knew it until I saw them pop up in the film, was the Wheelers.
mhm.
Because I didn't watch this movie as a kid. Clearly, a lot of other people did because they were like, "What the fuck is that? What the fuck is
Yeah.
that?" And let me tell you, when I started watching that scene, my first reaction was, "What the fuck is that? What the fuck is that?" um, we talked about like Dark
Also,
Crystal being like a big scary movie for kids.
yeah.
This one would have like destroyed me. I would have been fucking
Mhm.
petrified.
Yeah, I think it's one of those ones where like of that generation, it's another one of like those deeply traumatizing 80s fantasy films. Um that being said, I did not see Return to Oz as a child.
Oh,
Um
okay.
Return to Oz I did not know existed for the longest time. I no joke, I think I learned about Return to Oz through the Angry Video Game Nerd. So like
Mm.
that's how late into my life I discovered the existence of this film. Um I don't know why it was kind of like off my radar. I think it was one I think because it bombed, and we will talk about it more. I think there was a certain shame around this movie's existence for a little while that people were embarrassed that anyone even tried to make a sequel to The Wizard of Oz, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I can't think of like, are there many other examples of like the like trying to do a sequel like that, like to such a seminal film so much later with a completely different vibe and tone? Um,
A different vibe and tone, no. But I think the first one that jumps to mind is like Blade Runner 2049. But even that one,
Yeah.
it's very tonally consistent with that movie. It has more
Mhm.
of a plot than the first Blade Runner, but
Yeah.
like different strokes. Great films
Yeah,
all
yeah.
around. But
But that
that's the
is very
only other
much
thing I
a
can
like
think of.
that is so like that, but it looks like here's the Blade Runner 2049. Yes, it's made later. It looks like Blade Runner though, right? Like you watch
It's like
it,
a
it
hollowed
looks
out
like
version of Blade Runner, intentionally. You
what
know.
was that? I didn't hear you.
It's more of like a hollowed out version of the aesthetics of the original Blade Runner. It's like
Yeah, I mean it
intentionally, not an
yeah,
accident. It's a
yeah.
brutalist film. The first Blade Runner is not. That's like Art Deco and shit.
Mhm. Yeah. But it's it still looks like you could identify it as Blade Runner, whereas this it's a very Return to Oz is such a wild swing away from Wizard of Oz intentionally that I just think there was some shame around its existence, and I checked it out because I was kind of like shocked that it was real, and then it's one of those ones where people are like, it's actually kind of good, and I would agree. Like I think I have it with 5 stars on Letterboxd. That might be a little too much, but I do r- really enjoy the film. Partly because while I did not see this as a child, I did read the original run of Wizard of Oz books as a kid. The original L. Frank Baum books, which I believe I can't remember how many total he wrote. Uh, it might be like around a dozen or so that he specifically wrote. Um, but I read all of those in I think the fourth grade. And the Return to Oz is much closer to those books than the Wizard of Oz film is, which is partly what makes this film's existence so fascinating.
Yeah, I didn't read the. If I read any Oz book or books, like I would have been in grade school, like second, third, fourth grade, and I don't remember those. I remember like the Tom Sawyer stuff, and like I think I brought it up before. Like I discovered Lord of the Flies, and that for some whatever reason that book was the one that like got me to start reading nonstop.
You read Lord of the
Basically,
Flies in elementary school?
yeah,
That's insane.
yeah, uh huh.
That's genuinely one of the grimmest books ever written.
Yeah, yeah. And I did not read stuff like that or watch stuff like that at the time. But for whatever reason that kick-started my reading
You're
brain.
Catholic school, though, right?
Uh so grade school no, but there were
Okay.
always like there was an error. Like we're not a Catholic school, but we were a private institution and our
Mhm.
founder was Catholic and
That's why
they were
Lord of the
very
Flies was
Catholic.
even made available to you, because that is a very Catholic book,
Mhm.
um, arguably.
Yeah, a lot of talk.
Uh,
No, there's a whole talk about like Piggy being Jesus or whatever the fuck, or
yeah.
Simon. Excuse me.
Well, it's a lot
Yeah,
about like the inherent evil of man in a lot of
yeah,
ways. But yeah, that's pretty wild. Um, I guess Walter Murch might have used that for some of his influence on Return to Oz.
yeah.
Wanted to get the vibe and feeling.
Do we jump into our takes or do I go into my Walter Murch thing? It's just a quick little thing.
Well, how about we talk about? I want to know what you felt about this movie because you just watched it. I guess I just want to know
Yeah,
that. Um,
I really like this movie. It's
mhm.
so fucking absurd that this exists, and like I don't know. I feel like oh maybe it's too early, maybe it's too late, but also like just what do you even like do like how do you present a sequel to Wizard of Oz to people that like just isn't inherently sacrilegious, you know?
Yeah.
Like on some
Well,
level.
that is the ultimate conundrum of the Wizard of Oz, where, like I said, there are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 Wizard of Oz books written by L. Frank Baum. And that is not counting the dozens upon dozens of sequels written by other authors, some official, some not. there's this treasure trove of Oz related material, and because of the existence of the 1939 Wizard of Oz movies, it is impossible to adapt them, right? It is
Yeah.
impossible to do an adaptation of the rest of that stuff because it just Wizard of Oz 1939 stands too totemically almost, right?
Hmm.
Uh it has defined not just what the Wizard of Oz is, but what musical and fantasy films are for a long time. In much, it's very similar to something like King Kong, right? Of just defining what a monster movie is. Uh, and because there were several adaptations of Wizard of Oz before the 1939 movie. Did you know that?
I knew a little bit about that. I knew there was one. There's like 10 years before,
Mm,
and I actually found this really interesting because I think history tends to repeat itself in weird cycles.
mm,
Um, Hearing the discussions over the commentary track, it's been pretty grim in Hollywood lately. I don't know if you know this, Matt, and
mm,
listeners. It's been pretty rough, and just hearing them say like not complaining about like the the remakes and sort of like the monopolization of certain production companies and such. Like it's very familiar. It feels like they could have recorded it last week, and half the
mm.
people on the commentary track, maybe even 75% of the people on the commentary track, are no longer with us. Um, and I found that interesting. That I think a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about in regards to the history of Wizard of Oz, um, it's just very familiar. That was strange to really think about and like to hear coming from these people. But yeah, they bring up specifically the 1925 version, and then there was like other iterations, right?
Yeah, there were several films, most of which I believe are lost, right? Like it's just that
Mm-hmm.
early silent film thing, where most of the movies have been lost. I'm looking at the Patchwork Girl of Oz, which that seems to be one that keeps that's a specific book that keeps getting adapted. I guess it was thought to be lost, but they found it fairly recently.
Oh, good.
Which you can watch the whole thing on Wikipedia. It looks like it's 50 minutes if you want to do it.
That's great. That's great. I love shit
uh,
like that.
but there were tons. There were stage adaptations. Like there were musical versions of Wizard of Oz. Probably the most famous of which was probably the 1902 version. Like that's how old this shit is, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and it's crazy to think how much of a phenomenon Wizard of Oz was even before the existence of the film. And then the film comes out, and kind of lost in the discussion of Wizard of Oz is that the movie was a hit, but it was a slow build. It made its money more from the constant re-releases and then became more of a cemented classic uh, with it being aired on television over and over again. I think CBS still owns the rights to basically air it every Christmas. So The Wizard of Oz still airs on television every year, every Christmas. Um, and it's not just a film that is like it's like also like one of the most parodied films of all time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's everyone does some version of it. When we think of the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, the Cowardly Lion, we think of how they look in the Wizard of Oz film. Uh, the Wicked Witch came to define just how witches look in general. I believe the Wicked Witch is not green in the L. Frank Baum book. I believe that was something that was chosen for the film. Uh, there's a lot of stuff like that it became so defining that it washed the other stuff away, essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I got to be honest, there's a real wealth to those books. And maybe it's good that they can't really be adapted, right? Like maybe they're just not everything needs an adaptation, right? We don't need to turn everything into a tentpole franchise, you know.
Hmm.
Uh, but uh, there's some interesting stuff which we'll talk about as like Return to Oz is like this sort of weird amalgamation of like several Oz books into one.
Okay, I was
Uh,
gonna ask about that. Yeah.
yeah. A
Um,
lot of
we.
it's specifically it's a combination of the second and third book mostly, like The Marvelous Land of Oz and Ozma of Oz. They kind of had to combine the two because Dorothy does not appear in the second book.
Oh,
So
okay. Oh, it's a
uh,
Metal Gear Solid 2?
you know what?
I haven't even played those games, but I just know that, you know.
We'll talk about some of the elements of the Marvelous Land of Oz very shortly. But have you ever? So you haven't read the books.
No, 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 I have not.
What do you know that? Do you know like what the 1939 version established that isn't established in the book?
The main thing I know is that the red slippers are not red in the book; they are silver.
Yeah, they're
But they
silver
realized,
slippers.
I think it
Mhm,
was the production designer, set designer was like, ah, red's gonna pop out more on Technicolor,
mhm,
so let's do that. And
mhm.
good choice,
Good
frankly.
choice. Yeah, yeah, good
Yeah.
choice. Honestly, um, the other is the whole framing device of is it a dream? Is it not a
Oh
dream?
yes, yes, yeah.
Is was totally invented for the film. Although I think that maybe comes from the stage adaptations, where you can swap actors around and stuff
Hmm.
like that.
In
Have
the
you ever seen this?
commentary, they actually
Well,
bring that up specifically.
mm,
That it was an invention for this film because at the time, or at least for the, it's a little unclear if it was for the 25 version or
mm,
this version where the frame device was made because they were like, well, I don't know if audiences are gonna be able to invest in a full on fantasy film, so let's
mm,
give them a doorway to that. You
mm.
know, it's like, hey, well, that's a hell of a way to do that.
I think it's also an element of a lot of adaptations of Peter Pan too, right? Where like the actor who plays the father will also play Captain Hook, right?
Hmm.
They do that, and you were there, and you were there
Yeah,
at
yeah.
the end of it. So like that's a lesson. Also, like, and the other element is, and this is, I would argue, more debatable than anything, but there's always a talk of I think it's just that thing that happens where people go like, did you know the original source materials are actually a lot darker and a lot more fucked up? I don't think that's necessarily the case, right?
Hmm.
Uh I think I think it's just people are surprised by some more of the elements. Like that Tin Man fucking goes wild with that axe sometimes in the book, like where they have to fight off creatures that are being sent after. Like I think winged monkeys get like fucking decapitated by the Tin Man at one point in
Jesus.
it. But it really, when I hear people talk about that, it kind of makes me imagine like 100 years from now, someone does a like musical adaptation of the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. Remember that cartoon?
Yeah.
And then people are going like, "Did you know the source material is actually a lot more fucked up?" And it's like, not really. Like we get it. Like we got it as kids,
Hmm.
right? We are. It's kid logic. It's grim fairy tale. Like that. Yes, it's darker, but like there's a kid logic to it where it's not super dark. I think part of what Merch taps into with Return to Oz is sort of the memory of the scarier elements of the original Wizard of Oz that aren't actually there, right?
Hmm.
Like you watch The Wizard of Oz now, it's not going to scare you as an adult. There might be a kind of an unsettling image here or there, but it's not going to scare you the way it would when you're a child. And I think Merch kind of taps into the feeling of watching Wizard of Oz and being scared, right?
Hmm.
Uh, Like you're not going to be scared of the Wicked Witch as an adult, right? You're just
Yeah, no.
she's not scary. But when you're a kid, she's fucking scary. It's famously, I think it was one of those like lost media things. They had Margaret Hamilton on Sesame Street as the Wicked Witch, and they never re-aired it because it was like considered too frightening for children. And then they thought it
Oh.
was lost forever. And then it like someone finally found it. And of course you watch it and it's just her being the Wicked Witch. It's nothing too
Mhm.
shocking, right?
Yeah, it's not
Um,
Takashi Miike's episode of Masters of Horror.
No, it is not. Believe it or not, I always that's always what's so funny about lost media, where people go like, "It was considered too dark, and that's why it was lost." And it's like, no, it's probably lost for like a lot of commercial reasons, right? Like it
Or
doesn't
just that
mean,
studios are not
yeah,
in the preservation game, even though they should
yeah,
be, because it means they're
it-
fucking shit anyways. What the fuck,
mm,
guys?
yeah. But like, it's to me, it's just like I just love. It's so funny the lore that sometimes pops up around these things. Um, but I guess there is a darker element to the books than the musical 1938 version, but I don't necessarily think it's as dark as it is represented in Return to Oz.
Hmm.
Uh, not that that's even a complaint really, but it's been a minute since I've read the books, and it's also that thing of when you look at something from childhood with an adult's eye, you know, and like like Mombi like is in the books, although is a different named character, was swapping out the heads, right? Like that's from the books. Uh,
Yeah,
um,
that's just scary in any form of media. Like that's
it's
just gonna
scary,
be that's the
but
same level of scary.
also like I imagine when you read it, I don't know if it comes across as frightening as it does to visualize it in the film. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Like sometimes you just hear like, oh yeah, they could take their head off and they just swapped it out for something. I think as a kid you kind of like, you're like, oh yeah, you're like, like how dolls can take their heads off and stuff. Uh, you pop a Barbie doll's head off, you don't imagine it as a decapitation, right? Like it doesn't translate into that. But uh, yeah, it's just I don't know. It's part of the weird vibe this movie has. Now, do you know why this movie was made?
It's because Snow White was a hit, right?
Well, we're talking that's the 38 version, 39
Oh, okay.
version, I
Oh,
mean.
Return to Oz.
Yeah.
I actually don't know.
Okay. So in the 50s, the Walt Disney Company buys the rights to the remaining Wizard of Oz books. So they buy those. They get everything except for the original, and they can't own anything from the MGM movie, right? That
Hmm.
is MGM's. But Disney desperately wants to own the Wizard of Oz, right?
Hmm.
Like there's this long coming up on a centuries long battle of the Walt Disney Company trying to own the original Wizard of Oz movie. Because it kind of does feel like it is a part of that early Disney era, right?
Yeah.
And it is as regular in children's lives as Snow White is. Like we're still showing children the animated Snow White to this day. Um, to the point where when Disney goes to open their rival studio theme park to Universal Studios in Florida, it originally opened as the Disney MGM studio, and they made a deal with MGM so they can basically just so they can include the Wizard of Oz on the Great Movie Ride. Like they like it's like a weird propaganda campaign to trick people into thinking Disney owns the Wizard of Oz. Um,
They
so they
can't bear
buy.
the weight of them not owning a classic fantasy film.
Yeah, it's so funny. It's such a weird, like, fucked up, like how much Disney wants to own people's childhoods. uh, but they tried. in the 50s to do an adaptation. It was originally going to be part of the Disneyland TV show that used to exist that that would go on to be called the Wonderful World of Disney. That was where Walt Disney would host it, and you'd bring on like the Mouseketeers and shit like that. Uh, they apparently like wrote a script, got pretty far. They were going to do an adaptation of the Patchwork Girl of Oz, one of the seventh in the original run of books. At some point, they decided the script was too big. They thought about making it into a film called The Rainbow Road to Oz. And at some point, they just kind of abandoned it. But as a result, Disney owns all this Wizard of Oz stuff, right?
Hmm.
Come up to 1980s. What's about to enter the public domain?
Oh, the fucking Wizard of Oz.
The original Wizard of Oz book. So Disney is already thinking about it when Walter Murch comes to them and is like, I've kind of want to do something with the Wizard of Oz. And Disney was like, well, we're already ready to go. So do whatever. And boy, howdy, did he do whatever.
But you like this movie.
Yes.
When did you first see it? Because obviously I just saw it now. You saw it a couple years ago. You
I
said
saw it, no, I would say around high school age.
okay.
So,
I,
still
I
young, but I'm
forget
not a
the
kid.
I forget the angry
Right?
video game nerd's been around that long.
Angry Video Game Nerd has been around technically since 2004, but specifically 2006.
Wow.
So, yeah. Yeah. We're coming up on the 20th anniversary of the Angry Video Game.
Well,
Oh,
congrats to him.
no. Um, but yeah, so I probably saw it around then. And it was more just that was when I was getting into sort of I'm becoming more of a film nerd. I'm becoming more of a comic book nerd, anime nerd, all that stuff. Video games, retro video games. I'm getting into all that stuff in high school. And I'm starting to go through like what are the cult classic movies that I missed as a kid, right? Like this movie is considered a cult classic. People talk about it, but I've never seen it. And it was one of those ones where I watched, and I don't think I responded to it as strongly as I did, just because I think there's a middle ground in all our ages where we're less receptive to fantasy material,
Hmm.
um, at least of this caliber, where I didn't respect the artistry involved as much. And I kind of just had the vibe of, did you know there's actually a really fucked up sequel to the Wizard of Oz? Uh, and that was basically the only thing I took away from it at the time. But over the years, it's really grown on me, and it just has a lot of cool stuff in it. And the more I think about how much I like the L. Frank Baum books, this is like, okay, this is kind of the only adaptation of those books in a weird way. The Wizard of Oz film from the 30s might as well be its own thing compared to what it actually took from the books.
Hmm.
So I appreciate it on that level. And then with the continued attempts to do Wizard of Oz things that fail, you appreciate it a little more and more each time.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Because there's, I mean, what else has there been like
Well, this
attempt,
was a few
the
years
attempts to
after
Oz
Sidney
rather.
Lumet's film adaptation of The Wiz, another
Yeah.
bomb. Uh,
Do you
Sidney
like The
Lumet,
Wiz?
what was that?
Do you like that one, The Wiz?
Look, it's an undeniable mess, but I kind of like it. Look, it's got some stuff in it, and it's just interesting seeing Sidney Lumet essentially do a gritty '70s fantasy film, like Wizard of Oz by a Dog Day Afternoon. Like
That okay? I think you're
it's
overselling the vibe a little bit.
no, but like it's '70s era New York.
Hmm.
Like you've seen it, right?
Yeah, yeah. I also
There.
like The Wiz.
It's got the that era of New York is as much a fantasy now as the fake city of Oz. Like it doesn't exist. So it's this weird, at the time, a modernized version of the Wizard of Oz that is now like a fantasy time capsule. So I think it's an insanely unique movie. It's just crazy that that's how Lumet, who arguably has one of the greatest director's runs ever in the 70s, right?
Hmm.
Like, and his capper, the one he goes out on for the 70s at least, is The Wiz.
Yeah. Written by the late Joel Schumacher as well.
Yeah, he did the screenplay.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow. I
it
didn't know that until looking at this movie right now.
was a big, it was a
Jesus.
big Broadway hit. It was like a Broadway musical at one point. Uh, and I think they bring it back every now and then. And also, this is no joke. I went to one of the whitest high schools in Central New York, and we did The Wiz one year.
Oh.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. Um,
Well.
the only two black students that were in the choir were Dorothy and the Wizard.
Oh.
So,
I mean, I'm sure it wasn't malicious.
uh, I I don't know what was going on there. I was on the AV team. I didn't get a vote. I just did the microphones.
There was also I think it was an NBC show called Emerald City. Do you know about this?
Oh God, I remember it. I cannot
Vincent
picture a thing
D'Onofrio
from
was the
it.
wizard.
Oh, that's a bad choice.
No, no, but it
Uh,
was like again, it was a primetime show right
yeah,
before everyone like officially starts pivoting to prestige genre. So it's like
yeah.
there's that run of like interesting, like conceptually interesting shows that you're
Mm,
like maybe this could work, and they just can't survive on primetime regardless of their quality. Um,
mm.
the other one I really like is Kings, which is very well written and doesn't have a fucking chance. Nothing to do with Wizard of Oz, but I really like that show. It's for those that don't know, since I'm just talking about it anyways, it's a
There's
retelling
also
of the story of David.
uh I also had to bring up Once Upon a Time, which is a
Oh
Disney
yeah.
show that also incorporated a lot of Wizard of Oz stuff into it at a certain point. I don't think they started that way, but at a certain point they started in like the Wicked Witch started appearing in it. I don't know if it was, yeah, it looks like
It's a
towards
later
the
season, I
middle.
think.
Yeah, later
Right?
seasons, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I I've only seen a handful of Once Upon a Time. I just know that that is again another part of Disney trying to get the Wizard of Oz in their fold, essentially.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
here's the fucking problem with that show, and I haven't seen it, so maybe I'm just talking out of my ass here. But from my understanding, a lot of the fans really liked that first and second season,
mm,
and then after that, they would do like these sort of half season arcs where
mm,
there would be like this is the primary antagonist now, and it was like Peter Pan. He stole like the main kid of like the protagonist. And like I'm not against Peter Pan being a villain for something like that. If you're
that
remixing stuff,
actually
whatever.
makes a lot of sense in a weird way.
Yeah. And Peter Pan's also still like he looks like a kid, even though he's like however old, right? Like I don't hate that idea. I've
Yeah.
never hated that idea. And then the Wicked Witch comes in later, and I remember they made a big deal because Frozen was a big hit when that was on the air. So they do like a Frozen arc, you know,
Mm,
and it's just like it's totally reactionary to whatever's in like the pop culture consciousness at a certain point, rather than letting them just make a TV show, which is
yeah, it
unfortunate,
became
you know.
a extension of expanding the Disney brand, right?
Yeah.
It was basically their CW show, right? Like it was
That's a
their CW
great
show
way
when it
of
was on
putting it.
NBC, ABC. I mean, um, you see this. There is I think Kingdom Hearts is also a part of that, right?
Hmm.
Of the like, this is how we bring in weird anime nerds. Um, and there is I cannot remember the name of it, but there is some sort of weird anime AU Disney thing that I think it's mainly popular in Japan. Um, where, and I'm not, look, I will not go on a tangent. I'm just saying this. They all have like VTuber-esque designs. Like it very much looks like that. It's another way, but it's a lot of like, you know, Captain Hook, but like as a cool high schooler guy, right? Like as
Hmm.
an anime high schooler protagonist type shit. Um, and then there was the Descendants, which is a little after my time. So, but I know that that is like huge for certain people. Uh, they made like three Descendants movies, right?
Oh shit, did they?
Yeah. Um, but like that's again another like like it's I don't know what there's got to be a name for it, right? Like I just don't know what what it is.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
the Disney kind of re reselling their own brand to like because they have this weird thing where they everything they adapted was like a public domain fantasy story, but then they own the copyright on their specific version of it, you know?
Hmm.
Like you can't do an adaptation of Pinocchio that includes When You Wish Upon a Star. Like it's you can't do if you're going to do a Peter Pan, it has to Captain Hook cannot look that way in another version of it. Like there's just certain elements that they own and then they get to keep repackaging it and reselling it to people because a lot of what they own is so iconic. Like especially the songs too. I think the songs are probably a bigger part of it. You know,
Yeah.
it's just a weird element of the Disney brand. Um, so someone write something about that because I find it interesting. Uh, in terms of how Disney keeps tricking us into liking them again, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
It's,
the hot topicization of Disney. Uh, what is the next step? Because like right now we're at this weird precipice where everyone hates Disney again, right?
mhm.
Everyone's like Disney's an evil company. Everything. Did you know the original fairy tales are actually more fucked up? Like they're too woke. All that shit. They're getting hit with everything right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, what do you think the move is going to be to rebrand everything Disney so they can resell it to the next generation?
Um, I think they're gonna try to make plays for more adult oriented stuff with the success of I know this sounds silly, but this is not the Hollywood that existed 10 years ago already. So I think the success of Deadpool 3, um, Alien Romulus, people liking the Predator franchise and not just weird nerds like me on the internet. Like people loved Prey, and I've already seen people be like, "Well, when's the Prey sequel coming out? That's cool. They're making more Predators, but when's Prey?" You know, like that. So
Mhm.
I think they'll do that. They're gonna fuck it up, obviously, because they're gonna homogenize it as well. But I think
Hmm.
that's like the next step, you know. Like they're
Hmm.
not gonna put mouse ears on anything, but I think
I don't.
that's maybe the
I don't
move.
look. Let's discount the Marvel stuff. Discount the 20th Century Fox stuff. Like I'm not talking about them because like yes, they own them now, but like I'm talking about like the what we identify as the Disney canon, right? Of
Hmm.
the princesses and animated films and stuff like that. That's what they keep finding ways to resell to us. But I think you might have hit on something, which I'm in my head. I'm picturing Disney doing the quote unquote A24 style versions of their fairy tales of like getting getting indie filmmakers giving them $30 million budgets to do the quote unquote A24 version of Snow White, right? To
Yeah.
repackage it and do the prestige version, the elevated Disney, if you will. I could see that being the brand move there, where we all have to go. Do you know that fucking I God, who would be? And then Oz Perkins does an adaptation of fucking I don't know. I was trying to think of a dumb one, but the Rescuers Down Under, and
No, no, Oz
yeah,
Perkins, the Black Cauldron.
well, yes, like that's the obvious one, but I'm talking like somehow they trick us into like we have to take them seriously again, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the way like when Maleficent came out, Maleficent isn't a good movie, but there's elements to it where it was kind of like, if this is what they're gonna do with the stuff they own, I'm not against it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it quickly pivoted to, what if we just remade movies one to one, essentially, but worse somehow.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I thought about this guy watching this movie too, because he's the only other guy who knows how to make like family entertainment where he still puts like the child protagonist in like danger to the point where like
Mhm.
I maybe forget. I'm like, oh yeah, Paddington does make it out of this. Paul King
Yeah.
just got signed up to do a Prince Charming movie, and Chris
Mhm.
Hemsworth is gonna play Chris Charming allegedly, right?
Mhm.
Again, that sounds like, oh, what the fuck, stupid idea. And then I remember
Yeah.
Wonka and being like, you know what? It'll probably work out. It'll
Yeah,
probably be pretty good. So,
yeah, I'm now kind of into like Paul King can't miss. Like he'll make it work unless Disney fucks him. Like I'm kind
yeah,
of just
yeah.
on board. But that again, going like he's doing a Prince Charming movie sounds still part of the wave that Maleficent started, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of the going and like kind of just ape. Like what was that? The animated film they did recently. Uh, what was it called? Wish? Was that them?
Wish,
Where
yeah.
it's literally about the star from of When You Wish Upon a Star.
Uh-huh.
Like that's the it feels like that's what's dying. Like that movie flopping and Lightyear flopping are kind of like at least should signal the end to that kind of Disney film, of
Mm-hmm.
the stop aping the canon in this way. But like I'm saying, I'm waiting for someone to go, Oz Perkins is doing a $30 million adaptation of Snow White that's like gonna be like darker and like more atmospheric, and it's gonna play to adults as opposed to children. I feel like that might be the move.
I
Like
mean,
the
I'm
other
open to
thing,
that.
yeah, because the other thing happening right now is like we have the Terrifier film being a hit, and then there's that fucking dumbass Winnie the Pooh slasher film,
Oh, yeah.
which
Look,
made enough
I've...
money that they're getting a sequel.
The
And
sequel came out already, actually.
oh, okay. Well, aren't they doing another one?
They're
Like,
doing a shared slasher universe, and like
hmm,
literally today, as of posting, they shared the animatronic Pinocchio that they're working
yeah,
with.
that's.
That looks pretty good. I don't care about those movies. I
Mm,
like that they made a fuck ton of money off a very
mm,
cheap concept, and we're like, let's actually use this to make our stuff look better. Like,
yeah.
good job to those people. That is the
Yeah,
lesson you should learn.
well, I'm looking at them both. The first one cost $100,000, made 7.7 million. The second one cost $500,000 and made 7.6 million. So it's again, I think it hints at, it's that thing of like people kind of want that fucked up. There's an audience there, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So if I was Disney, I would be thinking of ways to tap into that audience. As fucked up as that sounds, like now I'm not saying they should go Terrifier levels with it,
Hmm.
but I'm saying that if they start going like, we're getting prestige filmmakers to do $30 million horror adaptations of our classic fairy tales, and they get to use the iconography that we own specifically. I could see that happening.
You get
Um,
Kenneth Branagh back for Cinderella again, and I love his Cinderella. I actually think it's really good. But now you do the shit like in the book when the evil sisters cut off like their ankles to fit into the slipper. You do shit like that. Do people know about that? I feel like no one remembers the original story for that one anymore. Maybe it's just me, but
it's a lot. A
that
lot of
was a
that
fun
stuff
read.
gets lost in translation.
Yeah, I mean I don't know why they left it out of the original movie, but it's that bit stuck with me for a bit.
Right.
I was maybe a little hesitant to put on shoes a certain way for a while.
So that's just part of me being like, again, like the Disney being able to not. And I think you hint at something that might threaten this sort of repackaging that Disney does, which is the Deadpool. Like now they own Deadpool and Marvel, and now they own all the 20th Century Fox stuff, where it's like, yes, that's all being successful and whatever, but it's almost like, are they just going to cycle through the different brands every few years?
Yeah. If they get
Like,
a
and that
fucking Kingdom Hearts show going or something, then maybe
mm,
that's their answer too.
there is rumors that that's going to happen, but I don't know how you do it before doing a Final Fantasy something,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, I don't know how you do it. So, like, they'll fuck it up. We could be entering, I think we're in that video game era of like the early superhero adaptations, right? Where
Yeah.
studios were adapting superhero films, but they didn't really get the source material and they kind of look down on it. So, like, we just get a bunch of lame ones, and occasionally we get a Spider Man too. Um, but uh, so I think we're going to see that for a few more years until someone cracks the code on how to do the consistently good video game movie adaptation. But I kind of fear the film rights to a Final Fantasy falling in the hands of Disney. You know,
Yeah.
uh, I kind of fear them owning that and Star Wars.
Yeah, that would be bad. Well, didn't you see the trailer for the new Star Wars show?
No, I
Skeleton
didn't
Crew?
actually.
It looks like the Goonies, but in space.
Oh boy, the Goonies.
Yeah, took a fucking long walk to get to that one.
hmm the Goonies is one I actually did see as a kid. A friend showed it to me. I remember we watched it on one of those like portable DVD players on a long trip in the back of the car,
Mm.
and I laughed. I loved it. The Goonies is a movie I can look back on and recognize that, yeah, The Goonies isn't actually a very good movie. Like, I loved it as a child. There's stuff I still love about it. The Goonies is not a great film.
Yeah.
So let's stop trying to adapt The Goonies into
Uh,
things.
Unrelated, before we pivot back to Wizard of Oz, I just watched a Fred Decker interview just out of the blue,
Uh,
right? And he was asked about like, oh, like comparisons from Goonies and the Monster Squad, and he was like, well, our kids were way less fucking annoying. And I was like, God, I love that energy. I'm like, dude, you careful. Like, I'm fine with that. The
mhm.
nerds out here maybe will accuse you of punching above your weight class, but whatever. I was really caught off guard by that. I thought that was very funny. Um,
Monster Squad, another one of those movies that is like 80s. Kids watched it and were like, "Holy shit," and then it's
yeah,
it's an
yeah,
imperfect object of a
hmm
movie. Uh,
yeah, and maybe I don't need to see that in Star Wars. I don't know, but
yeah,
that's another
I don't know.
conversation for
Well,
another time.
like I said, it's right now. Star Wars is in the hands of people who think cinema peaked with Ghostbusters. Like it's like people are like,
That
no,
was maybe the worst thing I've ever heard in my entire life.
it's people who sit back and go, the two greatest films ever made are Ghostbusters and Back to the Future. Like that is the vibe. Two movies I love, but there's a lot more to cinema than them. And also, people tend to watch those movies and not appreciate why they work, really. But hey, uh, yeah, there's just something. There's something. The '80s people are not letting go currently, right? I mean,
Mm.
God, I saw Ghostbusters. I think I talked about this on this, but I saw Ghostbusters Afterlife just on a TV, and it was so sad. No, it wasn't Afterlife. It was Frozen Empire.
Yeah, that was
Uh,
rough.
yeah, it's just, and it's like it wasn't even like awful. Like I like it. I kind of liked the subplot of the ghost friendship, the lesbian coded ghost friendship.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I kind of liked it, but then it's like, oh, but Dan Aykroyd's still here, and I'm like, Dan Aykroyd, I don't want to know that you're this old. I don't want to know that all these guys are aging and are running around shooting ghosts. Ugh, it's just it's sad. We gotta like they gotta start letting go of stuff.
Yeah.
Are they? I guess that's the other question. Here's I think this is relevant because the original Wizard of Oz film was about there's no place like home. Go back to fucking boring ass Kansas instead of staying in Fantasyland. Um, are are the '80s nerds gonna let go?
I don't think they can. I think we've asked this question for like 10 years through cinema already,
Mm.
and the answer is no. And they're going to have to deal with that too. It's not just culture becoming more boring and homogenized. Like, they have to deal with that. If you're not going to let go, then all right, suffer the consequences of that. Because time moves forward anyways. Like,
Yeah.
you can hold on to an anchor that's dragging you down to the ocean, even if you
Mm.
should let it go. It's
Yeah.
still going to drag you down to the ocean. Just because you don't want it to doesn't mean it's not going to.
Mm. We're also we just although we just had Transformers 1 come out, which apparently people like as a film,
Hmm.
but it is a little weird that we're still doing Transformers some 40 years later.
Yeah. Well,
And but it underperformed. So
yeah,
uh
all Transformers stuff does now. Every GI
mm,
Joe movie's underperformed except for the first. Well, even the first one underperformed. It just wasn't like a bomb. It did like
mm.
money, but it wasn't like a game changer. You know, it wasn't Iron
And
Man.
do you think it's just one of those things where like the guys who love that shit are still in charge, but the kids don't give a fuck anymore?
Yeah,
Um
you know, I mean, Scott Mendelson, the box office pundit guy, he always brings us up like these, like when Despicable Me became a new franchise hit, like over fucking 14 years ago now. My
mm,
God, um, or whenever that first one came out, like that was a new franchise. Now it's the franchise for families, basically, right? Whatever. Like I don't give a shit about those movies, but like that was exciting because it was new. And it's like, what's the last new thing? And he always brings up like these people can't find ways in because they're just trying to repackage stuff, and because of the way movies are made now, they're often half-assed repackages, right? And
yeah.
on top of that, now, even when IPs fail, because studios resort to IP as like the fundamental baseline of a
That's the
project
default.
greenlight, it's their own
Yeah.
fault, but they also can't like escape it. They will not allow themselves to escape it, even though they have the tools to do so. So just
Mhm.
because four Transformers movies have failed to recuperate their budgets now, they're gonna greenlight another live action one. They already said they're
Mhm.
doing the GI Joe Transformers crossover movie. When
Mhm.
both their last live action movies made the least amount of money in the franchises.
Yeah.
That's
And GI Joe
stupid.
has aged like just poorly. Like GI Joe does not have the like Transformers has some staying power, right?
Hmm.
Like it's Transformers, it's like kids. It's a robot turns into a car. You're always going to be able to sell that toy to children, right?
Yeah.
Like that's whereas like GI Joe, it's like imagine if we were at war forever.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah, GI Joe,
we
real American
are.
hero. That's like
It's
it's
not fun.
propaganda. I was gonna say a specific type of propaganda, but it's propaganda basically, you know. And
Yeah,
yeah,
but like
you cannot do that anymore.
like in a post Call of Duty world, you can't do GI Joe, right? It's just
Yeah.
too late. And but they keep trying.
And even
Um,
Call of Duty, I guess now, like I just saw a headline. I think it was like a Forbes review that said like
mm,
Black Ops 6 like reinvents the franchise because it. I have to fucking pull this up. I will trim this. Don't worry.
okay,
All
okay.
right. For Rolling Stone, the review by Cade Onder says Call of Duty Black Ops 6 has an inventive campaign that borrows from Doom, Inception, and more. That is not a stereotypical description of a Call of Duty game, is all I'm saying. And so I'm just saying, like, even that has to reinvent itself to that degree. They're
Although
done with like the modern shooter stuff, I guess.
although the description I'm reading of the plot for Black Ops 6 is set in 1991, Black Ops 6 single player story follows rogue operatives Troy Marshall and Frank Woods as they assemble a team of agents to hunt down Pantheon, a paramilitary group that intends on enacting a false flag attack on the United States in order to discredit and replace the deputy director of the CIA.
Oh, see, that sounds more in line with Call
Yeah,
of Duty. Yeah, there
I've
it is.
seen
Okay.
previews for Black Ops 6, and for a second I thought it was about the Bush era Iraq War, the 2003 Iraq War. And I genuinely thought they were rewriting history to make it seem like Iraq genuinely had weapons of mass destruction.
Oh, well, at least
Um,
they didn't do
that
that.
that was the vibe I got from that trailer. Um, Black Ops 6 is where all the reactionary action movies went. Like they still exist, obviously, but Call of Duty is like insane with that
Mm-hmm.
stuff. It's that's where if you're wondering, like, again, you're like, how can people be conservative anymore? Like none of our media reflects any of that. It's all in the Call of Duty games. It's all
Yeah.
that. It all went there. So
Yeah.
that's why the
Um.
video game audience is the most media illiterate. Sorry, gamers.
No, no,
Uh,
you're absolutely
but
right. It's like I'm at the
mm.
point where I'm like, yeah, games are probably an art form. You're not allowing them to be right now. You know,
Oh no, no.
yeah.
Video games are 100%. We've way blown past that. Video games have been an art form for a while now. There are amazing video games telling amazing stories. A lot of our genre fiction went to video games when movies stopped supporting them. Um, I could talk endlessly about games as art, and then there is just a core faction that represents, I would argue, like a third of the gamer market that just does refuses to accept taking video games seriously as anything more than just shoot your friends over online all day. Like it's it's weird. It's how do I explain? Imagine if there was a faction of film fans that were like NFL fans, right? And
Yeah.
then also it would be like, like, how, like, no, like, we all know that the concussions that NFL players are getting are like slowly killing them and driving them all insane, and we're destroying all their bodies, and it's all become this weird military propaganda machine, and everyone kind of knows it, but no one wants to do anything about it because they want Monday Night Football. There's that section of video games right next to people basically doing New Hollywood and the French New Wave with video games. Like those are happening simultaneously. Uh, it's weird. Um, so none of that has anything to do with the Wizard of Oz.
No, how do we bring it back? Or am I gonna have to cut that entire thing?
Well, no, I mean, look, everything we're talking about right now, like, you can kind of bring it all back to the Wizard of Oz as like establishing these sort of tropes, right?
Mm.
Like I'll say this: Gene Siskel's negative review of Wizard of Oz, he was like, he said they were ripping off Star Wars with some of the elements
Oh,
in Return
Return
to
to Oz.
Oz. Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Gene Siskel was like, yeah, it looked like that. Like, you got this guy, he's basically R2D2. He's like, guy, this guy is basically this, blah blah blah. And it's like, dude, Star Wars is doing Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Like, it was like, no, Wizard of Oz led to Star Wars. It's not the other way around, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Wizard of Oz ingrained itself so deeply into the culture that we don't recognize how totemic that influence is, right? uh, in terms of, it's. I mean, it's similar to, like, uh, like Lugosi's Dracula and stuff like that. Like, that's what a vampire and Dracula's is just forever from now on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Partly because of how it was originally done, partly because of the numbers of parodies that were done in the wake of it. And it's definitely, it's influenced everything. You could make the argument that a lot of, like, adventure game RPG mechanics you could trace to Wizard of Oz,
Yeah.
of going around slowly accumulating companions to go on your quest to do something.
Well, I
Like,
mean, down to the fucking yellow brick road.
yeah.
Like, how many? Here you go. Here's how you tie it back into video games. How many video games have you played where there's like yellow markings, either like on a literal road, a staircase, on shelves, on barrels, or something to signify that these are the ones you have to interact with to progress? Or there's like
Yeah.
objects, if you break this barrel or this box or whatever, you
Mm.
know?
Yeah,
Not every
like the
game, but I
different.
think of like Uncharted 2 when that amazing opening on that train sequence. Stick to the yellow ladders, and then you get through it that way.
I think it's funny you went to Uncharted 2 and I was about to be like, yeah, like the different colored bananas in Donkey Kong 64.
Well, your explanation's better. I just that was the first one that popped in my mind. I think that's the first one I noticed it back in the day. That's probably why.
See, Uncharted is one of those things like you like the Last of Us video game, right? Like
Yeah, but I do try to be normal about it, and I've talked about it enough. Yeah, I like them. I think they are good, and then that's like the barometer of them for me.
and now the guy behind it is like, yeah, it was all a metaphor for pro-Israel stuff the whole time. And
Uh,
everyone's like, "Oh no."
yeah,
Uh
well,
but
because I believe he is like an outward Zionist, and he has posted stuff, pro-Israeli stuff, and as far as I know, has not posted anything in protecting Palestinian lives. So as far as we know, pro-genocide, which is fucked up and wrong. Um, to his an ounce of credit for a man I probably don't even need to give it to. He did say his reaction to seeing how Palestinians were treated by Israeli forces inspired him to write Last of Us 2, where he realized that was wrong. Now, that is a stupid fucking statement to come out of the mouth of a 40-year-old man,
hmm.
but that is not the same as being like, yeah, this is how I'm
But
pro-Israel. He is pro-Israel though, so that
yeah.
is that's a whole extra
It also
step.
might explain why Last of Us 2 is terrible. But
I don't need to
anyway,
defend it right now. Yeah, not time or place, and I frankly don't give a shit anymore. So whatever.
yeah, yeah. But I like that, like Uncharted and Last of Us. Like I gave them in when I talk about like genre moving to video games, I give them that sort of pass from like, yeah, we don't make Indiana Jones anymore movies anymore, but we do make the Uncharted video game, right? Like it's
Hmm.
basically just a movie in video
Yeah,
game
yeah, yeah,
form.
yeah. But now,
But
Bethesda rather, are making an
yeah.
Indiana Jones game, so we're good there too.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
they are. But I mean, it's the people who did what do you call it?
Wolfenstein.
Uh, yeah, so like I kind of have some hope for it,
No, no,
you
yeah,
know.
I'm saying like we don't need Uncharted anymore. They don't need to bring it back. It's over now.
Oh, okay, that's
Indiana
what you're
Jones is
saying.
here.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, I was just saying, but again, it's still in the video game sphere, right? Like
yeah,
it's I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is just that although now video games are going through their own sort of apocalypse the way cinema did with like the big budget movies where like everyone's trying to be, Fortnite and Genshin Impact and shit like that.
yeah. They're
And
speed running the history of the film industry.
yeah, so I think all the industries are doing the same thing right now, and it's just gonna be we just gotta rebuild it. They're
Yeah.
basically gonna tear it all down. We gotta build it back up. It's not the
I don't
best, but
understand. We
hey,
spent $250 million on this. Why don't they like it?
yeah. Let's spend twice as much next time.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what's a really good idea? 300 million on an Indiana Jones movie.
It wasn't their finest hour. As the defender
Hey.
of that movie, which I think
Yeah,
is pretty good.
as I give that movie a very strong. It's fine.
Yeah.
Like, I would like to watch. I would have fun watching that movie with my dad.
Yeah.
Like that. It's very incredibly fine.
Yeah.
Not
Everyone
worth
else was angry
300
about
million.
it. Everyone else was angry, and we were like, yeah, it's pretty good by the end. Like,
Yeah, it really is that ending. I kind of just like that it went there with that ending
yeah.
of
Which is
just that
also
like that.
kind of a uh Wizard of Oz type thing. Going I mean it's the same world, but going to a different place, a different time, you know.
Yeah.
And then he
Oh,
he
this is
has
how
to
we
come
can
home, but
tie
he
it because
wants to
we
stay
talked
there.
we talked about the isekai genre recently on
Oh, yes,
some
that's
genre. I mean,
right.
that is 100% Wizard of Oz. You know,
Hmm.
of going to another world. I don't know. I wish I could trace it better because I bet you it's stuff where it's like, well, they did it in Gulliver's Travels and shit like that, or like Orpheus in the underworld, all these stories. But then you start getting into like Hero of a Thousand Faces territory, and I hate that shit. So
Mm.
like, I
Well,
don't
the
know.
antagonist in this has like 1,000 faces, or one of the antagonists has like 1,000 faces. So there you go.
Yeah.
That's why you like Return to Oz, because it
Hey.
recognizes that it is also annoying.
Although, again, speaking of Indiana Jones, this movie has the he chose poorly scene like
Yeah.
from Last Crusade, which is directly lifted from the books. That's a scene from the books. It's a little bit different, but that whole like choose the correct object is from I believe the book Ozma of Oz, the third one.
Mm.
Uh, so um,
I mean, talking similarities, Jack Pumpkinhead, like
yeah.
Nightmare on Elm Street. The Pumpkin
Mhm.
King. Like there may
You
be
mean
other
you mean
iterations of
Nightmare
that,
Before
but
Christmas?
oh god, yeah. What the fuck? Yeah, Nightmare Before Christmas.
Mhm.
Jesus Christ. Yeah. I mean, it's like the same outfit and everything, basically.
Yeah, it looks the same except like when Jack like jumps into the fucking he sets himself on fire and jumps into the fucking well, he comes out as a skeleton man. So
Yeah, they did
that's
that because they didn't want to get sued if he stuck around any longer in the
But
pumpkin
Disney
outfit.
owns both.
Oh yeah. Maybe that's why they're like, this is pretty similar to that other thing. It's fine. It's fine. We
Who
got
cares?
it.
Who cares? Who cares? We spent
Yeah.
so much money on Return to Oz, we can steal our own shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Cost $28 million, made $11.1 million.
And
That's a shame.
do you want to do your Walter Murch thing right now?
Yeah, I just discovered
Because
this.
his only direct this is his only directorial credit, right? Um,
It's his only feature film directorial credit.
oh, okay.
He has directed
Oh
one episode of
yeah,
television. Don't say it. Don't say
yeah,
it.
yeah. Don't you say it?
He directed an episode of Star Wars: The Clone Wars, The
Mm,
General, which
that's
is the
crazy.
one about the Jedi General Krell who has lost his mind and is killing his own troops in an attempt to win the war faster. Basically, it's more complicated than that.
Mhm.
That's some of the better material in that show. That's when that show was at its best, when it got
They
into the
literally
complicated
got the
nature of that
guy
stuff.
who edited Apocalypse Now to direct that episode.
Yeah, yeah. That's like,
I don't even
yeah.
know where to begin. But Walter Murch, like obviously one of the most legendary editors of all time, right?
Yes, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, only
in the
directed
blink
two
of
things, but yes, an
I in
incredible
the
editing career.
in the blink of an eye, like is like one of the totemic books on film editing, right? I think anyone who is ever interested in film has read it at some point. Yeah, um, uh, it's he's he's also he's quietly did some writing on THX. I think he's credited on THX 1138, but he's also one of the like 17 people who did a rewrite of Star Wars that has zero
Mhm.
credits on it. Um, but yeah, and it's partly that friendship with Lucas that gets him this job, basically. Uh, Sounds like he didn't have a lot of fun directing this. um,
Oh,
he was basically fired at one point, and then he was like kind of like not upset about it, but then was talked back into directing it with the help of George Lucas.
oh my God.
Like yeah, like he was fired fairly early on, and then George Lucas basically pulled a like I think there was recently talk about that with Sam Raimi and John Woo. George Lucas basically took the position of like, I will step in to direct if you guys are dissatisfied with what Walter Murch is doing. George Lucas, famous hater of actually directing things, was willing to put himself in the line, being like, I will step in if you continue to be dissatisfied with Murch's film. Um,
Did Lucas take that extra step that Sam Raimi did, though?
hmm.
Do you know about this?
Which one's that?
Well, Sam Raimi was brought in by Universal on the making of Hard Target, where Hard Target was like, "You got this fucking foreign director. He barely speaks English. Like, yeah,
Hmm.
just kind of, if he needs help on the set, just take over, you know." And Raimi was like, "Sure thing," and then kind of like looks at the camera and you know kind of nudges us, the audience, and then like I guess the studio and Van Damme were giving Wu a hard time, and so Sam Raimi shows up and he's fucking slamming his like hand on the desk, being like, "This is a John Woo movie. Let John Woo make his fucking movie." And I guess if I remember correctly, he didn't even tell John Woo that. He just like kept him off his back and really had him like it looked out for him while they were making the movie. And then Van Damme kind of maybe hijacks it in post, and Raimi can't do anything about that. But he looked out for him. Now, did Lucas
I don't know if he
maybe
went that
protect him?
far. I don't think George Lucas has that gear, but
Yeah.
he did back merch. He did back merch. He was like, it's his only film. It was his first time directing, and he had the backing of George Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola. Like Coppola also stuck up for him. And this
Oh,
is in that
cool.
weird Disney era where like they're shifting like leadership constantly. Like it started when I can't remember the guy's name, but it's the beginnings. The Eisner era begins sometime around here. Like the handoff happens, but it started production under the old regime. This is part of that weird run from like Black Hole to this where they're trying different stuff, right?
Hmm.
They keep trying. They make Black Hole. They make Tron. They make Dragon Slayer, which we well. I don't know when the Dragon Slayer episode will be out. We were supposed to do Dragon Slayer today, but changed our minds.
Yeah, because
Um,
we wanted to get this one out. We're
yeah,
recording before the election for
yeah,
reasons.
yeah. Well, no, we're not even doing that because of the. We're doing this because fucking Wicked's coming out. Like, there's
Yeah,
nothing.
yeah,
It's not the election. We're doing it for the Wicked thing.
yeah.
Um, which I guess there's early good buzz about Wicked.
No, no,
Uh,
everyone. Oh, fucking okay. Look, there's some critics I really like who seem like very good people, who I
mm,
think tend to be in the pocket of this thing is new and exciting, and boy, maybe this production company really rolled out the red carpet for me. I'm in a great mood. Let me speak highly of this film. And I'm not even saying they're doing it like maliciously. I'm just saying like, hey, you can get swept off your feet very easily with a lot of money and flash and circumstance. I get that. It's
no,
happened
I'm
to all of us.
and
you
also
know?
we got to talk about like I mean I guess let's just do the Wicked sidebar really quick. Wicked
Yeah.
is the book is 1995, ends up being a series of books by Gregory Maguire. I've only ever read the first one. Made into a musical in 2003. Um, I think it's I think Wicked is the famously everyone thought Wicked was going to sweep the Tonys, and then Avenue Q beat it. I think that was the year.
Hmm.
Um, or that could be. Let me check what year it was. Yeah, it was Wicked. The 2004 Tonys. Avenue Q basically did like a kind of like stealth campaign to kind of be like, nah, fuck Wicked. We should. But everyone assumed Wicked was going to win, and Avenue Q swept, and they had to change the voting rules as a result. But Wicked, it's been over 20 years. It took 20 years to get the film adaptation of Wicked off the ground. Part
And it
of it
looks like
is the weird.
shit.
What?
And it looks like shit. Sorry.
Yeah,
I
well,
just
yeah, that's a given. But I'm saying this was something that people wanted, like from day one. People wanted this film. Disney had a chance to do it at some point. They were going to do an animated version of it at a certain point. I think it became that problem where they kept running into who owns what, right?
mhm.
That like who owns what elements of Wizard of Oz? We can't square this deal. Uh, Universal Pictures somehow ends up with it through Mark Platt Productions,
What the fuck?
um, the people who brought you Dear Evan Hansen. Uh,
Wait. This is Universe. I thought it was WB. What the fuck?
no, I know. WB is doing something else Wizard of Oz related. Like they announced because they own the MGM, they own those rights now. So they're doing something Wizard of Oz related there. And Disney is also allegedly doing something Wizard of Oz related. Like, because the rights are now all split, and then some of it's public domain, some of it isn't. Like, it's a mess. It's a goddamn mess. Is the thing. It's a complete disaster. But yes, Universal is currently putting out Wicked, and I think have they been doing the the musical stuff lately? Uh, like
I don't think so.
Dear Evan Hansen was also Universal. Um, The Greatest Showman.
Oh, maybe they're
I gotta see if
trying to.
I gotta see if oh god, I got the wrong fucking page. The Greatest Showman, um, which wasn't very good. Uh,
No.
that was 20th Century Fox.
Okay. Okay.
So
Okay. Okay.
but that was kind of like quietly kind of brought the musical back for a minute. Like Greatest Showman, no one expected it to make that much money, right?
Hmm.
Uh, and then no musical has hit as well since. I don't think has a musical hit in since then.
Would you consider any of the Disney live actions musicals?
No, I do
Like,
not. No,
yeah,
no.
I kind of don't
Uh,
either.
In the way I do not consider Joker fully a musical. Like
Yeah.
jukebox musicals are a different thing, and the Disney adaptations of their own fucking bullshit might as well be jukebox
Yeah.
musicals. Uh,
Also, Lady Gaga and Todd Phillips said it wasn't a musical, so I guess we can classify it as not a musical. If they're insisting on it not being a musical, I'll concede that to them.
Great.
You
Thanks
know.
for wasting everyone's time.
Yeah.
Um, but
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
just trying to
but
think, like,
yeah, for Wicked.
like I'm just in terms of like, because we had, like there's been good musicals, obviously. Like everyone, like we love fucking West Side Story and shit, but that didn't hit. Uh,
Hmm.
I'm looking at the 2010s musicals. Like La La
No.
Land, I guess, is in there making money, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
La La Land is like a seminal film for this upcoming generation. I think.
yeah.
I
Well,
think
look,
that's their fucking. That's a gateway drug for them.
TikTok and to a lesser extent, what do you call it? Vine and Tumblr really empowered theater kids in a way we might regret sometime in the future. And they are starving for good musicals out there. They are starving, which is partly why Wicked, as bad as it looks, will likely make money. Right? It's just it,
Yeah.
the
Well,
theater
I mean,
kids need
it looks like
something.
ass. Oh, another element of those early preview reactions. That very
Mm,
first one. I mean, we behind the curtain peek. Yesterday, we did the Halloween live stream,
mhm.
which was appropriately a disaster because that's how I want all my live streams to go. But I brought up that the first like press run of like reactions was all variety writers,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they were all uniformly very positive and calling for like Oscar nominations and Golden Globe nominations and whatever. Golden Globes aren't real. Anyone can get a Golden Globe these days, but it's very pointed. They're really this is the one the studios are going to be pushing for at least this year. This is
It's
going to
Mark
be
Platt.
the or Mark
Mark Platt
Platt. He's
Productions. He's the guy connecting it all.
yeah.
Because he also did because the other one he's producing this year is Snow White, and they've basically given up releasing that movie.
No, that one's slated for next year.
Yeah, but I think it was supposed to be this year,
It
and they
was, and
just
I think there was like reshoots or something.
yeah, and then
Um,
I think that like all the stuff around it has made people just go like just release it as quietly as humanly possible.
yeah.
Are they doing
Um,
a live action How to Train? They're doing a live action How to Train Your Dragon movie.
yeah. From Dean DeBlois, who is the director of that trilogy.
I mean,
But
do
you
we
know
really
what that
want that?
means? Do you know what that means though, right? Why he's doing it?
Because they don't have to pay him.
They don't have to pay him, and then he probably wants to move into live action directing, and they're like, do this, and he can do that. You know?
Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah.
So,
Good director, but I don't know how his stuff will translate to live action. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Uh, anyway, yeah, we're on the verge of Wicked comes out at the end of November. So, by the time, oh God, Peter Dinklage is in Wicked.
Oh, he is.
Oh no, Peter, what are you doing?
Wait, I don't see it. What's this?
He's
Oh, I
he's
see.
the voice of Dr. Dillamond, who is a goat that talks.
Oh,
There's a big metaphor for racism in Wicked. Do you know anything about the musical?
I got uploaded on it. Yeah, recently.
Yeah. So
Um, yeah, and I like
it's
the music. Having listened to some of the music recently.
the music's good. It's kind of the classic though. There's a lot of political allegories in the original Frank Baum. Uh, there's a lot of political subtext to those books, and Wicked makes a lot of that. The book and the musical makes a lot of that subtext text. And then
Mm,
people go, "This is a darker reinterpretation of it," and it's like, no, it's just saying what the books are about.
yeah.
But uh, there's uh, there there is stuff in Wicked that when they do it, I think mostly in part two, frankly, if it comes out, will piss you the fuck off.
It will come out because they film them back to back. So
Okay. What are we doing?
I don't know.
Uh,
I
it's
I don't know.
yeah. Mhm.
We're doing mistakes. I want to go back to Return to Oz, unless you have anything else about Wicked, a movie that will
No. Now
probably be
would be a good
bad.
time to finally talk about Return to Oz.
Yes. What is the story of Return to Oz?
Return to Oz is that Dorothy is back in fucking dirt poor Kansas, and she will not shut the fuck up about being in Oz. So Auntie M and Uncle Henry think she's developing an early form of schizophrenia, so they take her to get electroshock therapy.
That stuff is filmed like fucking Nightmare on Elm Street 5.
Mhm.
It I could not imagine what this would do to my brain if I saw it as a child.
It's played so straight though. You're kind of like, yes, this is a girl with schizophrenia. Like, you pay to see a Wizard of Oz movie, and you're like, yeah, like she's crazy. Like this poor girl. Like
She is
she
obviously
needs
unwell.
she's unwell, and it's 1899. They don't know how to treat this. They're still doing lobotomies to people.
Yeah.
Like this is about to become one of the darkest films ever made. And then it's like, oh no, and then a flash flood happens, and she ends up back in Oz.
Yeah, and she's with the chicken. Her chicken, Belina,
Which, yeah,
who
and when
who can
animals go,
speak in
this is
Oz.
in the book too. When animals go to Oz, they can talk there. Belina is from the books. This happens a few times. Dorothy, uh, in like flash floods, falling off boats, fucking massive earthquakes. Like she keeps falling back into Oz. Uh, Very similar to the Narnia books. Like Narnia definitely lifted something from that, where they just keep ending up back. I think at a certain point in one of the books, someone is finally like, "Fuck it, Dorothy, just move here. Like we'll bring Auntie M, we'll bring Uncle Henry. They can live here." Like someone finally makes that decision at a certain point.
Do they do it?
Uh, um, did they move there?
Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah. There's a certain point. Look, Baum actually has like a really varied fantasy writing career. He wrote a lot of different books, like Dot and the Tot and Tot in Maryland, and another one that some people know. It's still fairly popular. The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus, which is a Santa Claus origin story. Um, it's been adapted a few times. I think there's a Rankin Bass adaptation of it. Uh, and then there's a another animated one from like the 2000s that I remember. I remember it airing on Cartoon Network a lot back in the day. So he had a very varied fantasy career for a little bit. along with other books. He also, he wrote a lot of the original Mother Goose books. So a lot of those Mother Goose nursery rhyme texts are Baum's version of
Oh
them,
wow.
which is interesting. Uh, he was really early in that stuff, and at a certain point, he's just like he just only does Oz books. Like I think even to his own frustration, he kind of ended up like being like, no one wants to read my other shit. I'm just doing Oz books, and I'm guessing whenever that happened was around the time Dorothy just straight up moved to Oz. But yeah, so yeah, Belinda is in the books. Uh, Now this whole thing of like getting there and everything being destroyed and like it being way later, that doesn't happen in the books.
Okay, it's not a
It's in the,
post-apocalyptic movie.
well, yeah, it's not post-apocalyptic, but it's also like the Narnia thing to bring it back, where like between Lion the Witch and the Wardrobe and Prince Caspian, like they go back and it's suddenly like way later, and the political landscape of Narnia has completely changed, right?
Hmm.
Uh, that's kind of becomes a recurring thing in those books. I what they're kind of combining a few things here, which is in the second Wizard of Oz book, which is called The Marvelous Land of Oz. I'm gonna just talk about the plot of this one because it's kind of insane,
Yeah, please,
but
please.
in the best way possible. In that book, that book stars a young orphan boy named Tip who lives in Oz. He doesn't get sucked to Oz. He's already there at the start of it. He lives under the guardianship of the evil witch Mombi, who
Mm.
appears in this. Although Mombi is not in this book. Mombi is not the head changing person. That's a different character. We'll talk about her later. They combine those characters. Uh, he lives kind of outside. Kind of lives at the periphery of Oz. He is the one who uses the powder of life to create Jack O'Lantern. Oh no, his name's Jack Pumpkinhead. For some reason, I thought he was called Jack O'Lantern in it, but he's Jack Pumpkinhead. Um, he brings Jack Pumpkinhead to life in an attempt to like scare Mombi. Mombi doesn't fall for it, and then is like, "I'm gonna turn you into a statue." So Tip runs away with Jack Pumpkinhead, and he basically meets a lot of the characters we meet here. He meets the Sawhorse, who kind of is an amalgamation with the Gump, who is in Ozma of Oz. But the big plot of Marvel's Land of Oz is that there is a woman by the name of General Ginger who has an all-girl army who leads a revolt to overthrow the Scarecrow, who has become the ruler of the Emerald City since the wizard left. Uh, I believe that's in the movie, right? When the wizard's leaving, he like says something about the Scarecrow will now be in charge,
Yeah, well
and
now
it's kind
that he has a brain, he can be like a leader.
yeah, it's kind of a joke, like
Yeah.
and I believe there are some jokes in the book about like how the Scarecrow hasn't exactly been doing a good job running it. So like General Ginger is now this is going to sound weird. She's kind of a parody of the women's rights movement at the time when the book, but Baum was pro women's rights, and it's reflected in the books where a lot of the villains and heroes of the books are women, right?
Hmm.
In fact, Marvelous Land of Oz stands out as having a male protagonist. More on that later. Uh, so she overthrows the Scarecrow and takes over with her all-girl army. They end up having to get like I believe they take the city back using mice, and it's kind of a joke about like women being afraid of mice, right?
Hmm.
That when the mice come in, like they easily, because the other thing is they can't defeat the all girl army because no one can punch a pretty girl. It's like so like that's how they win. It's it's silly shit like that, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
That was
But
great.
a lot of stuff happens. Like this introduces elements of the Deadly Desert, all that stuff. But the big element of the Marvelous Land of Oz is the twist at the end, which is the reveal that the Witch Mombi is actually basically responsible for the political turmoil that exists in Oz from the Wizard of Oz era and the following books. That she basically got rid of the Ozma royal family, and in their absence, allowed the Wicked Witches of the North, South, East, and West to rise. Now, and it's a little different in the film, but like basically getting rid of the royal family allowed that. Was able to use the Wizard of Oz as a bit of a puppet,
Mm.
that when he showed up, the Wizard of Oz helped sneak the baby Princess Ozma away in order to secure his power in Oz. Um, and then Princess Ozma, through magic by Mombi, was turned into the boy Tip. So it turns out Tip was secretly a girl the whole time. And at the end of the Marvelous Land of Oz, Tip is magically transformed back into Princess Ozma.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. And it's very interesting. And I keep waiting for the day for conservatives to discover the existence of this book.
No, but they can't respond because Wizard of Oz isn't popular, so they won't have anything to to bang a gavel over. They can only
Yeah, but
react to things that are in front
I,
of them.
it's the thing I want to do every now and then where it's like they're like, drag shows are grooming, and I'm like, drag shows are literally Bugs Bunny shit. Like Bugs Bunny was throwing on dresses and acting a fool all the time. Like it's like we raised your all you people that are now getting old and scared because your children don't talk to you anymore. You were raised on those cartoons. And then, oh, when was The Marvelous Land of Oz published? 1904? 120 years ago? This shit ain't weird. So, just throwing that out there. And it feels like The Marvelous Land of Oz wouldn't get adapted today because of that element, right? People would be like, they made Wizard of Oz woke. But I'm guessing the reason not to do a straight adaptation of that book is to get Dorothy into the story, right?
Hmm.
To do all that. So Ozma of Oz, the third book, is where Dorothy returns, and that's where the structure of that book is much closer to the structure of Return to Oz. Ozma of Oz features the Gnome King, I believe. Yeah, Gnome King's from Ozma of Oz, and the evil witch in that is called Mombi in the film is Princess. What is her name? Sorry, I keep. It's hard to keep track of the fucking 7,000 characters that appear throughout these books.
No, I get
Um,
it. I get it.
there's the Cowardly Lion, and then there's also the Hungry Tiger who shows
Yeah,
up
that'll
later.
that'll fuck anyone up.
And the Hungry Tiger literally just keeps going like, "Hey, I'm really hungry. Can I eat you?" And people being like, "No."
That's a
Yes, in
great bit.
it's a great bit, and he's always feels bad too. Like he's not like doing it being like, "Hey, can I eat you?" Like it would be awesome. He's like, "I feel really bad, but I'm so hungry, I have to ask." Um, uh, her name in Ozma of Oz is Princess Languid Air, a pun on languid air.
And that's one of the
And
witches you said?
that is the head swapping person.
Oh, okay,
Um,
Mombi, right?
yeah, yep. It's Witch Mombi is from Marvelous Land of Oz. They combined her with Princess Languid Air, who is the head swapping person.
Okay. You have
So
just solved a multi-year debate then on the internet. You realize that, right?
really,
Have you ever seen that video of those two guys yelling at each other where he's like,
Wicked Wicked to
"The
the
Wicked Witch of
East,
the East,
bro.
bro. She came
Yeah.
down in a bubble, dog. And what was her sister? A princess." So She is a princess. Good to know.
I mean, well, she's not a witch in the books.
Damn it. Okay, so maybe not.
She's just kind of like she's like the secondary villain again, like kind of subservient to the Gnome King, who is the primary antagonist. And I think he even comes back in like a few later books, but he's the primary antagonist of Ozma of Oz.
Oh,
But
that's awesome.
he comes from like a distant land. Like we start a lot of the someone pointed out a lot of the secondary um, uh, Oz books. Whereas the original book is about trying to get back to Kansas, a lot of the sequel books usually involve Dorothy landing in some land next to Oz and trying to get to Oz.
Hmm.
So, but they usually primarily take place outside of it. And yeah, and there's a lot of stuff where Dorothy and Ozma at some point team up. This is where you get the whole like choose the object thing. That scene comes from that book and yeah, and as well as the Gnome King's fear of eggs. And I don't think I can't remember if it's actually poison in the way water is poison to the witch, but like he has a fear of eggs, is like outlawed chickens and shit like that. So it's like a weird amalgamation of those things. And then the other element that it's kind of an amalgamation of is the visual look of the Scarecrow, Tin Man, and Cowardly Lion are a lot closer to the original illustrations in the book.
Hmm.
There's not even an attempt to make them look like the MGM version, probably for copyright reasons.
Yeah.
But that's how they look in a lot of the early drawings. And this, someone correct me if I'm wrong, they didn't really talk about it here, but if I remember correctly, the Emerald City was built it partly by the Wizard of Oz. Uh, and in the book, when you get to the Emerald City, before you can go in, there's that wall and there's that guy at the gate. Um, and he's
Mm-hmm.
like, well, before you go in, you have to put on these special glasses because the Emerald City is so bright you will go blind. Like you can't look like the emeralds shine so bright you will go blind. But what you find out later is putting on those glasses are actually what make the Emerald City look like the Emerald City. Like it's part of the Wizard of Oz's phony bullshit. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's more of that. So there seems to be a little bit of that here when you see the like ruins of the Emerald City, right? It's
Yeah.
like there ain't
Yeah.
there ain't shit there.
I'm and talking about like references and like how other things like stem from these original Oz material. Like I think of They Live immediately
I
with
was
the
thinking the same
glasses.
thing.
Yeah,
Like,
and instead of like showing you like oh this fantastical reality, it's showing you the actual reality, which is like hell.
yeah.
And
I, I do appreciate specifically in the film version that when the wizard is exposed as a con man, he just stays a con man. Like there's no redemption arc for him. Like he's still conning everyone. Um, also to bring it back, the other attempt Disney made to get a hold of Wizard of Oz is they produced Oz the Great and Powerful, the Sam Raimi film,
yeah,
uh,
yeah,
which actually made money, but
yeah. That is
no one
crazy
really
that that one
remembers.
worked.
It's not a good movie. It's kind of bad. Um,
Um,
and
do you
but that
think
that
we'll
is
see
one
a
of those ones you
reclamation?
watch. What was that?
Do you think we'll see a reclamation of that one?
Maybe because there is a lot of good Sam Raimi stuff in it, but as
Mm-hmm.
an Oz book, as an Oz adaptation, it's not very good. And as a lot of people point out who are big fans of the Oz material, it's kind of insane that it took forever to get another Oz movie made, and a book series primarily featuring female protagonists suddenly has a male protagonist, and it's about women fighting over him.
Mm-hmm.
You
Like
know,
it
that's kind
makes
of
the
fucked
Wicked
up.
Witch of the East like a woman scorned, and that's like the extent
Yeah,
of that turn, which is a
a lot of
shame.
people don't. A lot of people don't like that element because it is bad. It is a bad idea. It was a
I
bad thing to do.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
I mean I that and I know he did Drag Me to Hell between it, but like that and like the pressure of Spider-Man sequels, like I think it's really clear in hindsight why Raimi left for a while. You know.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think that he struggled with a lot of the shifts in the industry that were happening at the time. You know.
Yeah. But hey,
Um,
now he's got two things cooking. His like isolated thriller with Rachel McAdams and Doctor Strange 3. So,
we'll
yeah,
see.
cool
I mean,
stuff.
I'm gonna be there for him for Doctor Strange 3. I hate to admit it, but I will
Yeah,
show up
no,
for that
same.
one.
I don't hate to admit it. He gets to build it from the ground up, and it's going to be after Avengers bullshit, where it's not going to have to tie
Mhm,
into that. Okay,
mhm.
I'm in. That doesn't mean it'll be like 5 years, but whatever, whatever. I
No,
don't care.
no.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Uh,
kind of just did the plot of the movie too by just talking about the plot of those two books.
yeah, I think you did. I want to go back to the Gnome King because I didn't know
Mhm.
what this. I didn't know this was a thing that existed. This is like one of the most visually entertaining antagonists
I
I
know he's
think I've ever
great.
seen. He's fucking great. The claymation and the stop motion and all the motion. It's so fun to just like look at. And I don't even know the voices for this guy, but he's having a fucking blast. Nicole Williamson.
That's
Um,
the actor. He also plays the electroshock therapy guy.
oh
In
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah,
they
yeah,
do a lot of that here, which is fun. Um,
yeah.
Nicole Williamson, who came up recently on the show for a reason I can't remember.
Well, he's
He's
Father Morning in Exorcist 3.
he's at Exorcist 3, and he's
He's
Merlin in
Merlin.
Excalibur.
Yeah,
Um, so there you go. Um,
yeah. Nicole Williamson, good fucking actor.
yeah, he's really like hamming it up in the way you want a villain to.
Yeah. Oh, it's so
And stuff.
fun. It is
Mhm.
so much fun. I love this guy. I
Yeah,
want other people should just take the Gnome King now and just put him in other stuff.
yeah,
Make him exactly the way as he was in this, but in
yeah.
any movie.
Well, he's basically a mountain, so you can just do that. Like,
Yeah. Evil mountains. Come on, people. The shit writes
yeah,
itself.
yeah. Well, that's honestly when you read, I do recommend if you haven't read the Oz books because they're like all really short and really easy reads because they're for children, but there is a certain element of like L. Frank Baum casually dropping like that is one of the coolest fantasy ideas ever, just to be like fun and silly with it, you know.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, Gnome King returns several times in sequels. So he's probably the most. I think it says here he's the most overarching antagonist of the books. Um,
Oh, that's
so,
great.
uh, but uh, yeah, let's. I guess we can just talk about the characters a little bit. Because we
Yeah.
basically get like a new gang. I guess that's the one thing that would also frustrate people is that like even when Oz is restored in the end, does the Tin Man like say anything? You know,
Yeah, I don't think he
it's
did.
partly what makes this film so folly is that like you can't do a direct sequel to the 39 version, but people are showing up and part of the tension of the movie is waiting for the original characters to return, you know?
Hmm.
Like part of the tension is their absence, including Toto. Like there's a specific moment where like she says Toto, don't follow me. And it feels like a very early declaration of like this is not the first movie, right?
Yeah.
Uh and but you know in lieu of the Tin Man and the Cowardly Lion, we get TikTok,
Yeah.
who is it's basically straight up spelled the same way as the website TikTok for
Yes, I
starters.
know. I saw that too. This is, I swear, this is me being completely sincere and as a new fan to this movie. If someone could edit one of those fan videos of TikTok
Fan
set
edit
to
TikTok.
Kesha's TikTok, I would be
Oh
very
boy,
happy. Because I
you know he
that is a low key banger still, and she has reclaimed it from her scummy producer, so we can like that song again, the Kesha song.
right on.
I just want all my stuff to like coalesce together, and it's TikTok singing TikTok on TikTok.
All
That's all I
right.
want in life right now.
He's widely considered one of the earliest robots in fiction. He even predates the popularization of the term robot.
I imagine Guillermo del Toro loves this guy too.
Yeah, he has to.
Yeah, yeah, it's all
That's
there. I
who
mean, the Golden
that's
Army
who you
looks
would
like this.
cast as TikTok in a modern version of this. Get Guillermo del Toro.
I don't think he acts. Oh, that's not true. I forgot.
He was on Barry, wasn't he?
Yeah, I forgot. I was on Barry, and It's Always Sunny.
Oh
He's
yeah,
fucking
oh
killing it in
my god,
both. He could do it. He could do it.
I could. Um, but and he's literally he's the army of the Emerald City. Like he's just a one man army. Um, and you just turn him on, and he just starts fucking people up. But you know his gears run out fairly quickly. He's not the most fun. He's not the most practical robot in fiction. Like it's one of those like incredibly dark scenes where he's like the scarecrow put me in here and told me to wait for you. And he's like, I called for help until my voice switch turned down. And then I walked back and forth until my movement switch turned down. And then I sat with my thoughts until my brain switch turned down. And it's like, Jesus Christ, that's death.
Yeah.
They do include the incredibly dark detail when Dorothy is describing her adventure in Oz to the fucking professor guy when he's like, oh, you know what'll solve this? Shocking this girl's brain.
Mhm.
Um, she's like, yeah, I met the Tin Woodsman, and he isn't considered part robot. He's not considered robot in a lot of versions of it because he was a human being who slowly lost his limbs. Like he kept having accidents as a woodsman and replaced them with tin until he had replaced his entire body with tin, but he forgot to replace his heart. That's why he wants a heart.
Junji
So
Ito just got a boner.
what was that?
Junji Ito just got a boner.
Yeah, I mean that's the shit that happens in the books. Like that's what it's like in them books. Um, Again, give them a read; they're fun. Um, we got Jack Pumpkinhead,
Woo!
who is like he's you would think he'd be the creepiest character in this, but he's kind of the sweetest and most innocent.
To the point where
Um,
like he almost gets eaten by the Gnome King. I'm like, no, 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 no.
no,
Like,
no, it's like yeah, it's like really sad.
yeah.
Um, he's desperate. He misses his mother and sees Dorothy as his mother. Um, and he's desperate for someone a replacement for his absentee parent. He's desperate and will basically do anything to fill that void. Coincidentally, he was voiced by Brian Henson, son of Jim Henson.
Yeah.
Hey,
That's awesome.
wonder what Walter Murch saw in Brian Henson that made him think he'd be a good person to voice this character. I
Beats
wonder
me.
what.
Beats me. Um, all the puppetry and like the animation stuff in this is really great. I mean, the animation stuff's more limited, obviously.
Yeah.
But all the costumes and the wardrobe stuff and the production design is so fucking fantastic. I mean, to go back to the bit again where he's almost eaten by the Gnome King, they're like flinging that guy around and they're cutting between like obviously like rag dolls and
Yeah.
not even like complete dolls with like close-ups of like the pumpkin head, but I'm only looking for it. It's basically seamless. Like even
Yeah,
when
it's
they're like
pretty
dropping the doll on the floor, it's like a human being could fall like that. It was like
yeah.
I was really blown away by that in particular.
No, a lot of I mean, even like, you can kind of see the seams, but even like the human head sequences when she's swapping the heads
Oh
look
my
really
god,
good.
yeah, yeah. The
Yeah.
little glass like doors they're behind
hmm
and everything like that. Like that looks great. And it's like yeah, you could like hide people under that and stuff like
You can
that.
hide,
But
but even when she takes the one head off and puts it back like on the thing, it looks pretty
it looks
good.
yeah
So
yeah
yeah,
again
Walter Murch did a pretty good job like with the effects like incorporation of it. I would including the Gnome King, who was very obviously stop motion, but there's something about his otherworldliness that makes it fit, right?
hmm
Uh, where it doesn't feel it feels less like claymation and more like, oh, that's just how this type of monster is, right?
yeah
Um,
yeah. Oh, it kicks so much fucking ass. Like, I know it's like a weird thing to say about this, but it does. It's
No,
so
he's
good.
he's he's cool. We got the Gump, who's mostly just there to be kind of like he's almost like the Eeyore of the group.
Yeah,
Um,
you had brought
they
up the Gump before, and I was like, what the fuck is that? And now I love the Gump. I love the Gump. I love Gump.
he's he's a lot of fun. Um, Less fun are the Wheelers,
Oh yeah,
who are
those
scary looking
abominations.
fuckers. Who I believe are in the books too. I can't remember like how prominent they are in the books, but I do believe the Wheelers are an element of them. It's interesting that they bring this Wheeler element in, but then they also very clearly establish that the Yellow Brick Road is destroyed.
Hmm.
So the Wheelers seem very not useful in that instance.
Um,
Uh,
I was really uh, let's see. Let me track my history with the Wheelers really quickly because I'd seen the images of like the top of their helmets
mhm,
and like they're like it was in like GIF form too, so they're already like wonky looking in like a good way, a very scary way, right?
yeah.
In GIF form. So when that first reveal of the face beneath that happened, I was like, oh shit, like
Oh,
there's
there's a
more.
dude.
Yeah, I was like, there's more happening. Please stop. Like, and then
It's also
when they're at the
again, this is
wall.
another of the problems with this is it's very clearly like the justification for making this movie so intense and so creepy is that there are a lot of creepy elements of the original Wizard of Oz, right?
Hmm.
Like the Wicked Witch is scary. There's like how about a little fire scarecrow where she literally sets the guy on fire. There's the flying monkeys. There's a lot of shit in it that is frightening, especially if you're a little kid. And I can see that as being the justification for putting scary elements in this. What is missed is that is counterbalanced in the original film by having a lot of fun songs and people dancing and celebrating, which none of that exists until the very end of the film.
Yeah.
I do like one thing they keep though, which is it's more strange in this. What when you consider how dark it is they keep Dorothy's like no matter what they throw at Dorothy, she's kind of like, okay, well let's just keep going. Like there's the part where they're basically they're like falling to their deaths essentially when the Gump falls apart
Hmm.
and Jack Pumpkin's like I'm sorry Dorothy and she's like don't worry it couldn't be helped like as they're falling and it's like luck they live it's a very funny juxtaposition with all the darkness going on in it um but
Yeah. Um, I think maybe the that's the reason they cast a very young Dorothy in Fairuza
mm,
Balk. Um,
yes.
who's great in this, but like it definitely like took me a second to like adjust. Even already accepting the movie that it was presenting to me, I'm like, hey, Dorothy's
Yeah.
like younger than she was in the movie this is ostensibly a sequel to. So I was just like,
Well, and
okay,
we forget that
gotta be its own thing.
Dorothy is supposed to be a child in Wizard of Oz. Like, it's not,
Yeah,
she
it's
isn't in
just
the, it's just
yeah.
how they made movies then. Like, it's just how they did it, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
Well, a kid
it's
actually can't
Florence Pugh
carry
in
this
Little
whole
Women.
story. What was that?
It's Florence Pugh in Little Women. You know.
Yeah, yeah, kinda. Although Florence Pugh is more believable as a child, frankly.
Oh yeah, yeah. Pro
But
Florence Pugh, pro Little Women.
that's what the Wiz gets dinged for all the time, right?
Hmm.
Like that they're like Dorothy's too old in this because they cast Diana Ross, right?
Hmm.
And I don't know how old Diana Ross was in it, but like it was older than I think they originally intended. And some people go like, that's why it doesn't work. I don't know if the primary audience is children. I think children kind of just look past that stuff, right?
Yeah, it's
Uh,
not something they worry about
yeah.
traditionally.
hmm Here's a weird question. All right, wait. How old were you when you saw the original Wizard of Oz?
Probably four. I couldn't have been older than five. I
Is it one of those
remember the
movies that
exact
was?
room I was in when I saw it.
Oh, so you remember the first time you
I
saw it?
remember because this is like me and my cousins. It was at my grandma's house. It's the house my grandma's still in, but now it's a bigger place. But
It's
now
like a
there's like
horror movie title.
what, my grandma's house?
The house my grandma's still in. I don't know.
Oh,
That struck me a little odd.
I'm very lucky to have a very loving, understanding grandma. I'm gonna have to take that title and write the scariest possible version of that. Like, what if all the good things about my grandma?
Mhm.
What's the worst versions of that? What is the evil version of that? And then
Yeah,
I'll have
yeah,
a
pretty
movie.
much.
Yeah, it was a living room there. We used to watch like, cause she was the one that had cable. I didn't have cable as a kid.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so we watched like the Disney Channel movies and stuff like that with my cousins there, right? And then eventually, it was my mom and like my godmother were like, "Oh, you guys gotta like, we're gonna have a family movie night because we would do that. We would like that's how I saw, um, Jurassic Park for the first time too.
Hmm.
At least I think I definitely saw the Lost World like that the first time. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, we saw Wizard of Oz, and I just remember being like glued to the screen. I couldn't tell you exactly what I was feeling, but I definitely remember that the watching it. You know, like I don't think it blew me away when it shifted from the black and white sepia tinted to Technicolor. You know,
I
but
have a
yeah, yeah.
vague memory of that kind of wow moment the first time, but I can't tell you like the totality of like the first time I watched it, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. But you were how old
it's
were you?
I mean I had to have been like three or four too. Like it's always kind of been there. Um,
Hmm.
I know it's this thing of I know I saw it when I lived in my old house, which I lived in until I was 4 years old. So
Mm,
that's like the good demarcation. I can kind of remember what movies I watched there versus movies I watched when we moved to the new house.
mm-hmm.
Um, and so it definitely was before that. Because I remember playing pretend time with friends where we would do Wizard of Oz type shit. I don't remember why. We just would run around. I don't know what we could have been thinking. Um, it was like that and
Well,
Mary Poppins were like early stuff I was exposed to at that age.
I still
Um,
haven't seen Mary Poppins.
what?
I still haven't seen Mary Poppins.
Oh my God, you should watch it. It's
I
great.
know. No, but here's the thing. Now I'm waiting for it to play on the big screen because I've
Okay,
really
that's not
been
a
meaning
bad.
to. But yeah,
Yeah,
now I'm holding out for that.
you might have to wait. That's a Disney film. Like,
I know. But they're getting play at like New Beverly once in a while, so that's why I'm like,
yeah, but
hey,
that's
maybe.
partly, I bet, trying to keep Tarantino happy because he was talking so much shit about them.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, probably.
I mean, here's the thing though. This was uh what is it? This was the 60th anniversary of Mary Poppins this year. So I don't know if there was a re-release of it. It must have been very small.
Oh,
So you might have to wait a few more years.
oh man.
Uh,
Well, here, not related to Mary Poppins, but back to Wizard of Oz. Did you watch it like on like? Because there's some movies that never really left my life, like Jurassic Park. I would watch that every couple years, if not every year, growing
mhm.
up. Wizard of Oz, like I would I was never like embarrassed to like that movie. Like I think we talked about like ignoring fantasy stuff. Like I was never embarrassed about Lord of the Rings. Like I never
Yeah.
hit that phase with that movie or those movies. But there was
Mhm.
definitely a period of time where I hadn't seen it in like a decade. Wizard of Oz. And a couple years back, maybe even like God, like 7 years back, like around the time we started podcasting together, I probably caught it right when it was somewhere over the rainbow, early on in the movie, and just fucking knocked me on my ass again. Where I'm like, holy shit, this is the greatest thing ever. This is the power of
Mhm.
cinema. I'm like holding back tears in my eyes, like, oh, whoa. I didn't know it still had that power over me.
Mhm.
Did that ever happen to you, or was it like always kind of there still?
I think because it was one of those movies that like one I even it's carried over into adulthood. When I love a movie, I rewatch it multiple times over and over again, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
now when I'm an adult, I do it with JFK. When I was a kid, I would do it with Wizard of Oz. So like I probably watched it until the tape wore out, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um so there's that angle to it. And then I think it was just one that was like on at Christmas every year. So like you're at your grandparents, they'll put it on because your grandparents don't want to believe you're growing older, and you don't want to make them believe you're growing older either. Um, I remember one time I cursed in front of my grandmother for the first time, and I had been cursing fairly regularly at that point, and I could see the shock in her face, and I felt like the biggest piece of shit on the face of the earth. Like I was like, "Oh, I didn't need you to see that."
Yeah.
Um,
No,
I
you
do
know what?
remember though there was two things. One, my local theater growing up did a stage version of Wizard of Oz.
Mm.
Syracuse Stage. Shout out to Syracuse Stage, a local group of amateur theater actors, um, who it's like it was like professors at the college, like who like side gigged as like performers and stuff. Uh, and the guy, I remember, all I remember is the guy who played the Cowardly Lion also played Captain Hook like the year before in a Peter Pan play. They did the stage production of Peter Pan. Um, and I don't know if did your school ever do this where you would one of the field trips of the year would be going to a theater to see a performance of something?
Yes, fucking thank
Yeah.
you. Yes, okay.
Mm.
No, sorry. I went to go see a newer play here in Orange County, actually, a little ways out from me, and it was a Joan Rivers based play. It's about her life, right? And it was pretty good. I enjoyed it. But I couldn't remember when I'd been to that fucking theater before, and you just unlocked the memory. Yeah, I went on a school trip way back when to that exact theater, and I got to text my friend. We were trying to figure it out in the car, and
You
I had
remember what you
no
saw
recollection.
there?
I think I saw Death of a Salesman there for the first
Oh
time.
my God.
Yeah.
We went um and saw we saw Wizard of Oz, and they did a really weird thing in that version where where the Yellow Brick Road was played by a person with like a long kind of dress essentially to represent the road.
Hmm.
Interesting idea. Oh, we saw Peter Pan. We saw uh uh there was a I can't remember the name of it. There is a musical version of Huckleberry Finn. It was on
Hmm.
Broadway. I can't remember the name of it. They did that. That was probably my exposure to Huckleberry Finn. That was fun. And then we also did we went to a different theater to see a really amateur version uh of Alice in Wonderland, like some really trippy version of it. That was clearly like art students trying to put on a show when I look back
Hmm.
to it. It was like stripped down, like there's nothing on stage. It looked like Dogville. Like, it didn't look fantastical. Um,
Did you ever
but
participate in those plays, like for school?
um, I what did we do? All right, here's where it gets weird. I was on the AV team in high school, so I didn't do any of the so like I was involved in a lot of plays, but I didn't perform in any. When I was in elementary school, when it came time for the fourth graders got to do the play, and when it came time for the end of the year fourth grade play, we had a music teacher who had written her own musical. Um, and it was like a bunch of short fairy tales, right?
Hmm.
And that she had kind of so like she was you know that thing where when you get older you realize, oh, your art teacher's dream was not to be an art teacher. Your your art teacher's dream was to be an artist,
Yeah.
but they got to pay the bills somehow. Nothing against it. Look, art teachers are amazing people, but at some point you realize that was not your goal in life. That's all. Like God bless you for raising the next generation, but it's a lesson we all learn. And her name was Miss Haas. I'm saying this because I do have some friends from that era who listen to this podcast,
Oh, hello,
and
friends.
uh, Miss Haas was basically a tyrant. I don't know if you
Oh,
had this music people in from elementary school to high school were always the meanest teachers. They were always the like take this shit seriously.
there was definitely
Um,
that. I don't know about Tyrant because I have I have less happy memories of other teachers. I have very
Mm.
fond memories of this musical instructor because she made us work our little butts off. But um, I had seen old footage of us because I used to
Mm.
record the Christmas musical thing that they had the students sing for. Pretty impressive for middle schoolers, I'll be honest. Hey,
No, there
don't put
is
us on
something.
Broadway, but
Isn't where's that? Who was it? Was it like a middle school or high school that did like a stage adaptation of Alien or whatever?
yeah, it was a high
Like,
school, and then Sigourney
yeah,
Weaver went to see it.
that's amazing. But like I said,
That
like
yeah,
that's
that's fucking great.
like give kids can do that shit. It's one of the other strong arguments to put funding into the fucking art. Like we
Hmm.
could be like kids could be doing such amazing shit. But yeah, so but like that's a long way of saying we were basically fulfilling Miss Haas's dream with
Mm.
adapting her musical.
Oh,
When I played a skunk.
all right. Did you like it?
I improvised something and Miss Haas liked it. So I remember it to this day. So maybe that was the universe telling me I should have become a performer, but I didn't.
No,
So
okay. Well, maybe
uh,
you still could.
it was some stupid it was a bunch of little fairy tales. I cannot remember all the details, but it was some stupid story about a frog who gets sick of eating flies, so goes to different animals and asks them what they eat. And of course, I'm the skunk and I eat garbage. Like that's the joke. Um,
Yeah.
it's very children's fables bullshit. But I'm trying to think. I mean, like yeah, there were other plays. What's the my sister when she was in Ferdinand and the Bull or whatever the fuck is that what it's called, Ferdinand the Bull?
I think
Um,
so. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
where
yeah,
the
yeah,
bull,
yeah. It is.
yeah. She was the which I believe has a Spanish setting, and we had no Spanish students in our school, frankly. So whatever. She was the mayor's wife. I remember that. So shout out to my sister and her commanding performance as the mayor's wife. No name.
Just wife.
Yeah. And like I said, like yeah. Other than that, I pivoted very quickly to being on the AV team, and then we had again another tyrant, head of the music department, who would bring in basically outside help to make sure the shows were as big as possible. And fucking my friend Dan was always so pissed because he was like, "We're supposed to be here to learn this shit, not to have someone else do it." And Dan would complain to me, and I would be like, "Dan, I am on so much oxycodone right now. I don't feel anything." Like I just want to do what the instructions are. So that was the closest I got to stage stardom.
Oh, okay. Um,
What did you
interesting.
do? What plays did you do?
What I was the Cheshire Cat in our Alice in Wonderland adaptation in sixth
All right,
grade.
on. Hmm.
Yeah. Um,
Were you like in a cat like outfit, or did they represent the cat in a weird way and you
we
voiced
did
it?
because they wanted us to put it on for ourselves. Each classroom had to put on their own version of a
Oh,
play, right?
okay.
For the parents when they
That's
came.
interesting. That's
Yeah, yeah.
interesting.
So it wasn't the grade working together. It was like our classroom this and then their classroom that.
Huh.
Yeah, yeah. So it was a very truncated version of Alice in Wonderland. I don't remember all the other details.
Mm.
But I didn't want to do that. But they're like, you got to do something, and everyone else took the jobs where you don't have to do anything besides like sweep the stage and like in front of the classroom and be a tree or
Mm.
whatever. So I was like, oh, all right, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, I had we made a cat mask and put it like on a stick, so when it was invisible, I'd be speaking from behind
Oh,
like a
yeah.
desk, and then it's
Mm.
like whenever they would speak, it would be like whoop, and I'd raise the little cat mask up, so it'd be like the cat
That's
talking.
fun.
Yeah, yeah, not the most inventive thing, but for sixth graders who had no
Well,
know-how, yeah, it came together.
that's kind of what the version I saw was like. They did something like that where they would put the cat's face on a stick and like different body parts would appear and disappear. So, uh, how big was your school?
I think It's very small. I think I mentioned it before, but I drove by where it used to be recently, and it not
Hmm.
only is it much smaller than I remember it being, they moved the location of where the school was gonna like be
Yeah.
boarded. So that is now just like a plot of land with a lot of
Hmm.
construction around it and grass overtaking everything. And
Yeah.
we had like classroom trailers, like
Oh,
those.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, and they're all obviously all gone now. There's like two like in the back that were like decrepit. Maybe they couldn't like move them or whatever. They couldn't afford to. I believe they moved to a location with actual rooms and
Okay.
buildings, so that's better for
Yeah.
the kids that are there.
It was
I
like a smaller school.
It was a smaller school. I don't think there was more than like 50 kids in each grade.
Oh,
Maybe even
really?
yeah,
Huh.
maybe even less.
Huh. I had a fairly small school, but I think that for us was like maybe like 100 kids each grade.
Hmm.
So, but we were on the smaller end, which allowed certain, we got to do more as a result because like the way the budgets broke up meant more money per student,
Hmm.
um, but I had the unfortunate of my when I was in middle school, they did an expansion on my middle school while I was there. So like we had to like half the building was shut down and then it was only finished like right when I was leaving. And then when I got to high school, the same thing happened at the high school where they did some expansion like the second year I was there. Um, Goddamn. We never did the trailer thing though, because it was New York and like you can't do that in the fucking winter.
Oh
You can't
yeah, yeah,
expect
yeah. Oh
kids
my
to go
god,
to
those things get so
trailers.
fucking cold.
Mm.
They really had to like bundle us up for those classrooms, and they had like heaters. They
Oh.
had like
Mm.
a ventilation system and stuff like that. But it's in hindsight, I'm like, oh yeah, that's why I was fucking freezing all the time in those classrooms. Like, good lord.
Good memories. Good
Yeah,
memories.
yeah. I'm gonna remember Return to Oz for a very long time.
Yeah. Again, it's
I
one
don't
of those
know.
ones where like it wasn't part of my childhood, but like I think it does deserve its reputation as a cult classic. Like
Yeah, totally,
it
totally.
I didn't watch it with nostalgia glasses when I first saw it. I watched it because someone else with nostalgia glasses told me to on the computer. Um, and
Yeah.
uh, and I ended up really liking it. So yeah, it's one of those like I would recommend seeking it out if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, I was just looking at her failed fantasy stuff, and I guess maybe there's another movie. I don't know if I'm gonna move it up. I don't think I need to. But there's one more movie we talked about that has a very similar vibe to a lot of other people's like
Hmm.
perception of it when they were kids. I
Hmm.
like that movie more still, but I think that one just like that was a game changer later in my life.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
but this is up there in terms of quality, and I just did not expect that. Um,
Hmm.
Not from just a Wizard of Oz sequel, but heading into this conversation, like watching it for the
Hmm.
first time, I was
Yeah,
really,
and I
really
think we're
just
also
caught off guard.
we've gotten so used to the '80s children being like the Transformers movie is actually amazing, and then you're like, not really,
Yeah.
but
I mean, it's got
what
Orson
do
Welles.
it's got Orson Welles in it, but it's not a secret masterpiece of its era, right?
No. No, the most compelling argument for that movie is the H Bomber guy video about it.
Yeah, which is him basically having a breakdown while
Yeah,
talking about it.
exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. But let's see. Anything
What are
else
you
about
gonna
Return
do?
to Oz? I mean, there's like there's so much with like Wizard of Oz, and I feel like I'm kind of just scratching the surface of like what is even there for Return to Oz. Like
Hmm.
the I guess just like it's hard to compare the filmmaking because like Wizard of Oz had
Yeah.
like a handful of directors. Obviously, the main credit goes to Victor Fleming. But there's
Hmm.
like all I mean that movie had like a nightmare production. It sounds like Return
Yeah.
to Oz also had a very difficult production.
The
Um,
one thing we should start saying about the original Wizard of Oz is that all the credit Gone with the Wind gets should go to Wizard of Oz. Like I know like your grandparents all love Gone with the Wind because they're secretly racist people.
Mm,
But we got like I think we're ready to go. Okay, Gone with the Wind. We don't need to keep talking about this one, but we should keep talking about Wizard of Oz.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, and even if it
so
never like the love that movie creates in all of us, because I do think you just like have to love that movie as a human being. Or maybe you don't have
yeah,
to, but I'm just shocked if you don't. Gene Siskel. But
no, no,
like,
Gene Siskel didn't like Return to
oh
Oz.
right, right, Return to Oz.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
If in if it continues to inspire stuff like Return to Oz, or even just like incrementally inspire other things, that's cool too. That's cool. Yeah, go watch
Yeah,
Wizard
like I
of
said,
Oz.
go watch Wizard of Oz again because it's always worth revisiting. And then check out Return to Oz, and if you like Return to Oz, I would recommend checking out the Oz books.
Yeah, I
Um, the
definitely am now. I
yeah,
am I
they're
am about
I
10% of
believe
the way through Silmarillion. So after that,
that'll be a wild pivot. But it's also hey American. It's an American fantasy series. L. Frank Baum was born near where I grew up as a child, uh, and it's I think they're all public domain now. I think every single one of his books are now officially public domain, so they're very easy to access if you want to read them. Um, and yeah, give them a go.
yeah,
Uh,
I not an inherent negative because again, Wizard of Oz that's like totemic. That is a biblical like level importance movie. Um,
mm,
I would just say like the craft on Return to Oz is obviously incredible, and I was gushing about it earlier with stuff like the Gnome King, who I love, and the Gump, my boy. Um, it's just hard to like put it next to Wizard of Oz, which is like you've never
yeah,
seen these movies switch between different film colors like this. One without color, which is then tinted, the sepia stuff, um, and then the 3-strip Technicolor, which was not the first one to do it, but it was very new still,
mm,
and still very obviously impressive. And just on that topic too, whenever people say like we should bring back Technicolor, just you can modulate stuff like chemically and digitally now to create images of that caliber. You don't it doesn't make sense to do Technicolor anymore. The 3-strip Technicolor is 3 separate strips of film
yeah.
gluing together while image capturing. It sounds
What
like a
isn't it?
nightmare. The chemicals
Isn't
are
it?
different and
Yeah,
worse
it's
for
like not
us.
physically possible to do, right? Like
I
I
mean, you
love.
could, but you
Th-
would have to like basically psyop the entire world into doing just Technicolor to make it financially worth it.
yeah, I would
It's
kind of like
great. I
someone
loved
to
it.
go insane and do it though. Like I would like someone to take that gamble, but it's not a like we need it back, I
Yeah.
guess.
And also, just because I'm seeing other people be like, "Oh, like we gotta bring it back" and stuff like that, and they're posting pictures of stuff that's like not even Technicolor, which is
Mm,
very funny. But whatever. You can just make those colors in real life and then photograph them and then color time them properly, and they will look good
mm,
too. It is not that
mm.
difficult. It's a little time consuming, ain't that hard. I don't know why people don't anymore. Probably because of time and money from studios, but we have the tools
I think
and the
it's
capabilities.
I think it's a mix of studios don't give people enough time to do it. People don't know how to do it, and then we've seen so many bad versions of it. People are discouraged to do it, right?
Hmm.
Like I think it's a mix of that. Um, but
Yeah.
hey, I'm not
There
an expert in
was
that stuff, so I don't know what to say.
Well, I
Um,
mean, you have a point though. As we wrap up right now, like I heard a recent film that I liked. I'm not even gonna name it, but like the director had to go out of their way to basically oversaturate the images on set with like the lighting and gels and stuff like that. Work with the editors to really push the colors even further because they knew the producers were gonna pull it back anyways. And it's one of the better
mm,
looking movies that came out this year.
mm,
But that's how complicated this stuff is. It's not like no one's trying. It's that it's
mm.
like you said, they're sort of
What,
dissuaded from
why don't you
trying.
want to say what movie that was?
I just want to be careful.
Okay.
It's a good movie. It's just
Is it one
I
I
found
would
that
get angry
interesting.
about you saying is a good movie?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I'll tell you after recording. It's just
Okay.
when I heard that I was just like, oh wow, like we're like in the shit right now. Like
I am curious. Was it
yeah.
was it Venom? Whatever the fuck.
No.
Okay.
I just that was no. It is not that
I
one.
haven't seen it. I haven't seen it, and I frankly don't plan on seeing it.
Okay,
So
it's no Let There Be Carnage. I
okay.
enjoyed it, but the second one is the peak Venom film.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Venom should go to Oz. Anyways, that was the show. This might be the last recording for a minute here.
yeah. Well, no, we got. You'll be getting episodes per week, everyone.
Yeah.
So everyone's doing well. I'm not sure what comes out after this because we were supposed to release this episode later, but now we're releasing it with Wicked.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I don't know what's next. Just keep an ear out. We might have already announced it in last week's episode, um, and then pushed it back by one, or it'll be something else. So just keep it. You guys are paying attention. You see what
Yeah.
we're releasing. So
Or we'll just do
uh,
Dragon Slayer. Who knows?
yeah, that's possibly one of the next ones is Dragon Slayer.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a heads up, just to give you a heads up, just so you could actually seek out Dragon Slayer.
Yeah.
Because that's not one. Although if Return to Oz is on Disney Plus, Dragon Slayer must be on Disney Plus, right?
There's only one way to find out.
It's not. It's on Paramount for some
Ah,
reason.
fuck. God damn it.
But you can still. That's whatever.
Whatever.
Um,
I'll get a Paramount trial. I ain't
yes.
paying for that shit.
hmm I always
Uh,
calculate, like, whenever I do like a trial, like where I go like I'll pay for 1 month of this service, I think of how many movies do I need to watch to justify the money I put down, and then I just make sure I watch that amount before canceling it.
yeah. Hey, keep an eye out for those because sometimes you can miss like canceling the payment thing.
Mm.
And I guess there's a lot of like settlement stuff going along with a bunch of different companies right now because some of those might be unethical business practices to say the
Yeah.
least.
Well,
So,
something got passed recently that now like they have to make canceling a subscription as easy as starting one. So, um,
mhm.
you know how it is more difficult to cancel like they always hide the cancel subscription option. Uh,
Mhm.
Technically going forward, they're not going to be allowed to do that. Um, which that's a
Yay.
nice thing. That's a nice
Yeah, that's good.
change. Um, but
Yeah,
hey, that
yeah,
has
that
nothing to do with
was.
fantasy films. Keep an eye out for whatever the fuck is next.
Mhm.
Uh, and Diego, you say the last thing.
Okay, yeah, we've been professionally unprofessional.
Bye, everyone.
To see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz. And here he is, the Wizard of Wiz, if ever a whiz there was. If ever, oh, ever a whiz there was, the Wizard of Oz.
Won't you take me with you?
Why, of course I will.
Hooray! Because of the wonderful things he does. Lions and tigers and bears.
Oh, wow.